Mic check, 1, 2, 3. Mic check, mic check.
All right, I think we have everything distributed that came at the last minute. That's in front of everyone. And so before I gavel in, if you bear with me, I'm just, as we traditionally have done in this committee, I'm just ask for a short blessing over our proceedings here. Heavenly that you minister to the needs of each and every person here. And I pray all this in the name of my Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. The meeting will come to order. I note that a quorum is present and that each member has before them the material on our agenda today at their place on the rostrum. We have before us today the Agriculture Committee print, which includes recommendations to the Budget Committee pursuant to the budget reconciliation instructions provided in Section 2001 of the concurrent resolution on the budget for fiscal year 2025, HCON Res 14. Without objection, the chair may recess the committee subject to the call of the chair at any point during this meeting. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. The legislation before us today is a necessary component to prevent the largest tax increase in American history on our families, farmers, and small businesses, and to deliver critical funding necessary for the Trump administration to continue their work keeping Americans safe. More specifically, our reconciliation instructions provide the opportunity to restore integrity to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, to make sure that this essential program works for the most vulnerable and functions as Congress has intended. Additionally, it allows for vital investment with our Farm Bill programs, addressing immediate needs for farmers, ranchers, and rural communities. And by putting the farm back in the Farm Bill, Congress will be better able to deliver a full long-term reauthorization of a highly effective Farm Bill. In this measure, we achieve our savings and meet our reconciliation instructions through necessary SNAP reforms, requiring states to have some skin in the game, and encouraging more effective and efficient administration of the program, all while getting folks who can work back to work. Since 2019, SNAP costs have skyrocketed from $60 billion to $110 billion annually, an 83% increase, while enrollment has grown from 36 million to 42 million. Unlike every other state-administered entitlement program, SNAP benefit is 100% funded by the federal government, resulting in minimal incentives for states to control costs, enhance efficiencies, and improve outcomes for recipients. Despite low unemployment and 7 million available jobs across the country, less than 1/3 of able-bodied adults on SNAP who are supposed to be working to receive the benefit have earned income. Unfortunately, the bipartisan work requirement that has been enshrined in the law for decades has been skirted by the executive branch and states, leaving 40% of those subject to the work requirements living under a waiver. Unless Congress acts to restore integrity to the work requirement, millions of able-bodied adults will remain on the sidelines, disconnected from work and out of reach of the ladder of opportunity. Meanwhile, states who administer the program collectively make close to $13 billion per year in erroneous payments, both overpayments and underpayments, to participants in the SNAP program. This number has nearly doubled since 2019, and this is a slap in the face to the taxpayers, but more importantly, it is a disservice to the truly needy who rely on SNAP. We also know most states are out of compliance with processing SNAP applications on time, leaving eligible families in need waiting months for assistance. Clearly, SNAP is not working as Congress intended. We must ensure the proper incentives are in place for states to administer the program more effectively for those it serves. And this measure does just that by aligning SNAP with other state-administered programs and requiring a minimal benefit cost share on the states. I believe the success of SNAP should be measured in terms of individual outcomes. Meanwhile, my colleagues across the aisle appear only to care about maximizing federal outlays. An efficiently delivered benefit with a meaningful incentive to work towards independence is a win for both the taxpayers and for the SNAP recipient. Now back into farm provisions. Since the 2018 Farm Bill was enacted, input costs have skyrocketed, commodity prices are down, and the margin squeeze has every major commodity underwater, with some in their third consecutive year of losses. These are dire circumstances akin to the 1980s. By the end of 2024, farm debt reached its highest level in more than 50 years. Declining prices, soaring input costs, and increasingly frequent natural disasters are pushing producers to the edge. And in fact, the Agriculture and Food Policy Center at Texas A&M has stated that in their 42 years of keeping records, the prognosis for farm profitability is the worst that they've ever seen. If we fail to act, we risk a full-blown financial crisis that could devastate the food and ag supply chain. Row crop farmers are dealing with volatile markets and rising costs. Livestock producers face heavy regulatory burdens, and animal disease outbreaks. Specialty crop growers are fighting labor shortages and supply chain issues, and those in dairy industry are managing unpredictable weather and market swings. The solution is clear. We need a strong farm safety net and forward-looking policy that offers producers real certainty. Tonight, we will hear much consternation on the other side about investing achieved savings into programs that will sustain but also strengthen our rural communities. Now, I assume my colleagues need reminding of contemporary farm bills where farmers were stripped of billions in exchange for additional funds in nutrition, or where nutrition saw a 1% decrease in the deficit reduction exercise of 2014, yet farmers had to face an astonishing 25% cut. All Americans demand that we prioritize and steward finite taxpayer resources, and that's the new path that we begin down today. This text encompasses many unanimous bipartisan priorities shared by each of you and incorporated in this bill, including trade promotion, research, and various specialty crop programs. The combined package before us today bolsters every facet of American agriculture. It restores integrity to SNAP, a vital social safety net, invests in America's farmers, ranchers, and foresters, and helps ensure a robust rural economy for our next generation. I'm proud of this legislation, and I look forward to advancing it to the next stage in the process. And now I'm pleased to yield to the ranking member for any remarks that she may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I became ranking member of the committee for the 119th Congress, I expected to be here today in a different kind of markup, one where you and I worked to bring Democrats and Republicans together to pass a bipartisan 5-year farm bill. And yet, here we are tonight, with a bill that came out 24 hours ago, one that seeks to cut around $300 billion from a title of the Farm Bill, the nutrition title, in a partisan process. Folks, the average SNAP benefit is about $6 per day. Let me say that again, $6 a day. You don't build a life on SNAP. You build a bridge to the next paycheck, the next opportunity, that next moment of stability. I'm sure we will hear about this today, so let's dispel the myth that SNAP discourages work. That's simply false. Adults on SNAP are already required to work or actively looking for work. Many are juggling multiple jobs, trying to raise children and make ends meet. Others are caregivers, students, or temporarily out of the workforce due to illness or injury. SNAP doesn't enable dependence, it enables resilience. And here's the deeper truth. Access to food is not a privilege. In a nation as rich and resourceful as ours, no one, and I mean no one, should go hungry. That's exactly what will happen if we gut this program tonight. And you're going to hear a lot of conversation about math tonight. But $240 billion of the cuts are going for tax breaks to wealthy individuals and large corporations. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that the new paperwork requirements alone will take food assistance away from at least 3 million people. We will see children going to bed without dinner, more seniors skipping meals to afford their medicine, more parents sacrificing their own nutrition so their kids can eat. Cuts that every single one of us knows will take food away from families at a time when working folks are struggling with higher costs. Every single one of my Republican colleagues here tonight should be ashamed. The instruction to this committee were to find $230 billion in cuts to SNAP, but that wasn't good enough for the extremists in your party. So tonight, you're cutting more. And you know a traditional farm bill is not a priority for your leadership. If it was, we would have seen it on the House floor in the last session of Congress. So you're stuffing all the funding we need for farm programs into this partisan process tonight, and you're just holding your nose. The cut you are proposing to SNAP tonight would be the largest rollback of an anti-hunger program in our nation's history. Now, tonight, I know I'm going to hear some of you rant and rave about waste, fraud, and abuse and error rates, but this bill fails to address any of those issues. Common sense solutions like upgrading EBT cards to chip technology, a security feature that's been used for credit cards for a decade, are nowhere to be found. And the changes you are proposing in the error rate calculation are designed to increase error rates in your states, which will force states to cut benefits. Make no mistake about it. I know our farmers need a better safety net. We are right here ready to work on a bipartisan farm bill. But that's not what is happening tonight. Tonight, you're taking food away from single moms with 7-year-olds at home, as if being a single parent raising a young child wasn't hard enough already. And farmers, too, will suffer from your direct attacks on SNAP. We know the stats. Every dollar invested returns $1.50 in our economy. We know that food travels through the entire food supply chain. SNAP supports 400,000 jobs in grocery stores, warehouses, trucking companies, and farms. It helps pay the wages of the clerks who stock the store shelves, the truckers who deliver the food, the manufacturers who package it, and the American farmers who grow it. Today, if you vote for this bill, it will result in $30 billion in lost revenue for our farmers. Because when you take food off the shelf, you are impacting our farmers as well. This massive, unfunded mandate this bill forces on states just passes the buck onto state legislatures, forcing them to slash local programs and services, cut benefits, kick vulnerable people off SNAP, or raise taxes. We already know states can't afford it. This is an attempt to shift blame so that when parents and people with disabilities start going hungry, the people who wrote and voted for these cuts in this very room can look each other and look the other way. Benefits will get cut, and for what? To fund tax breaks for the ultra-wealthy and large corporations, not for the middle class. Tonight, my colleagues, I am a no. Tomorrow, I am a no. And every day after that, I am a no on this bill. I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady. The Agriculture Committee, print pursuant to the budget reconciliation instructions for fiscal year 2025 is now before the committee, and without objection, the first reading of the text will be waived and the measure will be open for amendment by subtitle, after which it will be open for amendment at any point. I would like to remind members that only amendments germane to the subject matter before us today shall be in order. No motion or proposition on a subject different than that under consideration shall be submitted under the color of amendment. Pursuant to Committee Rule 3I and House Rule 11, Clause 2, the chair may postpone further proceedings today on the question of approving any measure or matter or adopting an amendment on which a recorded vote is ordered. And without objection, we will vote on amendments using an electronic voting system for amendments and passage. I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute for the committee print under consideration. Each member will find the amendment at their place on the rostrum, and without objection, it will be considered as read and as original text of the measure for purposes of amendment. As we move into general debate, I'd like to advise members that I intend to enforce the committee's rules of decorum at all times. The issues we are debating are important ones that members feel deeply about, and while vigorous disagreement is part of the legislative process, members are reminded that we must adhere to established standards of decorum and debate and be mindful of our remarks. With that, any member who wishes to speak on the measure will be recognized under the 5-minute rule, and I'll be recognizing Mr. Lucas first.
Mr. Chairman, I pass.
Okay, Ms. Lucas passed. I'll be recognizing Mr. Scott.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman, I strongly oppose this Republican proposal to slash $300 billion from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Let's call it what it is. It's a massive, cruel cut to the most effective anti-hunger program in our nation. This isn't about fiscal responsibility. It's about punishing working families, seniors, veterans, and children who rely on SNAP to put food on the table. We're talking about a program that lifts millions of people out of poverty each year. SNAP is one of the most important tools to improve food security and nutrition. 42 million Americans receive assistance through SNAP every month, including 1.2 million low-income veterans who put their lives on the line every year fighting for the protection of our nation. And across my state of Georgia, 683,000 households participate in SNAP. In my district alone, 41,000 households receive SNAP, more than half of which are young children. And yet, my Republican colleagues are throwing these families under the bus to pay for tax cuts for the wealthiest families and the richest corporations in this nation. This comes at a time when President Trump is working to destroy other nutrition programs, like the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, which provides nutritious meals to 700,000 low-income seniors. This bill does nothing to help those experiencing food insecurity, nothing for the next generation of farmers, and nothing to address the needs of our people in rural America. But instead of passing a bipartisan farm bill to protect SNAP, here we are sitting, preparing to take food away from millions of hungry families. So let's briefly discuss how this Republican reconciliation bill ignores real evidence. SNAP is one of the most efficient and targeted federal programs we have. Every dollar spent on SNAP generates up to $1.50 in economic activity. SNAP provides a modest $6 a day for food, that's all. This bill will reduce insufficient evidence. Now, the unrealistic and harsh requirements work requirements will force as many as 3 million SNAP recipients to be at the risk of losing benefits, including up to 2 million children. Let's be clear. This cut is not just a line item in a budget. It is a direct attack on the dignity of the American people. We are a nation of plenty. We should be investing in feeding our people, not abandoning them. Mr. Chairman, in your state of Pennsylvania, this means 1.8 million participants will be adversely impacted with these cuts. In Wisconsin and Oklahoma, the impact will be felt by 700,000 families in each state and almost 500,000 in Minnesota. These are your very own constituents. I will be submitting several amendments to strike many of these disastrous cuts included in this bill to exempt veterans, military families with children from losing SNAP benefits. And my hope is that my Republican colleagues will support these common sense measures and reject this heartless reconciliation bill. My friends on this committee and people of America, this is not only un-American, it is ungodly.
The gentleman's time expired, and I recognize the Mr. Austin Scott, also from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm proud to be from the great state of Georgia. For those of you who aren't from Georgia, I want you to know that our state's reserve funds are so full that we have issued a tax refund to our citizens. We have over $5.5 billion in reserves, and I expect as a well-run state, we can certainly absorb any of the minor changes and keep our people that deserve the assistance on the assistance. I just want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the staff for the diligent work on this bill. We are over $36 trillion in debt. The text complies with the reconciliation directives laid out in the budget resolution. It reduces the deficit, restores program integrity and efficiency, and will provide for an investment in American agriculture. And so I just, again, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you and the staff for the work on this piece of legislation, and I want the citizens of my state to recognize that the state of Georgia, because we're well-run and didn't shut down our businesses during COVID, we have a $5.5 billion reserve. We're literally at the constitutional max because we're well-run, and our governor just signed a piece of legislation that's going to give the taxpayers of the state of Georgia a one-time refund because of that. Mr. Chair, I yield the remainder of my time.
Gentleman yields back. I do want to take a point of personal privilege and ask you, keep Mr. Costa in mind. He'll be with us tomorrow. He had a family member that passed away over the weekend, and he was is traveling back from a funeral where he delivered the eulogy. So I talked with Jim last night. So, and now I'm pleased to recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have a simple question for Republicans. Whose side are you guys on? Because let me tell you something. You can all say all you want, but your bill picks a side. Your bill sides with the rich donors who rig the system and pay nothing in taxes. Your bill sides with those at the top, and it screws the people who voted for you to fight for them. Your bill sides with millionaires and billionaires, and it hurts workers who are struggling to get by. And now you guys have the nerve to hold this committee markup and lecture us about fraud and waste as you abuse the legislative process to jam through a bill that just came out last night. Give me a break. This entire process is a fraud. This is all about stealing from the American people so you can give another tax break to the rich and powerful. This is not just about some government program. This is about people. And Democrats are not here to defend the status quo. Food assistance programs can and should work better. We're here because hungry people can't be. We're here because working people and working families can't be. They don't have the time or the money to come here to fly to Washington and testify on about how your bill would take food out of their shopping carts. So let me speak on their behalf. We have food assistance programs in this country because most Americans believe that nobody should go without basic necessities. So many people on these programs work their entire lives, but need a little extra help from their neighbors to get through a rough patch. These aren't statistics I'm talking about. These are real people. I'm talking about a single mom who gets laid off from her job as a waitress when a local chain restaurant shuts down. So she gets in her car and drives 30 miles one way to the city just to look for a new job because there's no openings nearby, and she can't find one. And this bill, your bill, kicks her off her meager food assistance benefits in just 90 days, which means she doesn't get benefits and has less money to buy her kids, who are 8 and 9, food. You're punishing her as well as her 2 children by taking food off their plates. And there are millions of families in this position, folks who paid taxes and played by the rules, expecting that their government will help them if they fall on hard times. And you guys want to tell them to all go screw themselves. It is so out of touch, it takes my breath away. You guys make Marie Antoinette look down to earth. Donald Trump's cabinet is like an episode of The Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. These people are totally clueless. They don't shop for their own groceries. They don't buy their own food. We have members of Congress who sit in their nice, fancy offices, get driven to work by their staff, and never have to worry about anything. And they simply don't understand why a 63-year-old factory worker who's been breaking his back for 40 years lifting heavy equipment can't just go out and get a new job when he gets laid off. This bill gives that worker 90 days to figure it out before he goes hungry. I mean, seriously, what is wrong with you people? And you know what? I think you guys know exactly what you're doing. Either that or you're just so afraid of Trump that you don't care. But either way, this is just shameful. And I find it unconscionable and immoral. And make no mistake, this is an immoral bill. Jesus says to us in Matthew 25, whatever you did to the least of these, you did to me. This bill steals from those with the least. Also, Republicans can give more to those with the most. And I think there's a special place in hell for people who take food away from hungry people. So please, spare us the lectures about the dignity of work. Your bill humiliates people who are already struggling to survive. Spare us the crocodile tears and fake outrage about waste and abuse. Your bill takes from moms and dads and gives to billionaires who abuse our society, paying nothing in taxes while families struggle to put food on the table. This is a shameful bill. It is a cruel, mean, rotten bill, and we will not be silent and we will not be deterred in our mission to make sure that every American knows whose side the Republicans are on. And one final thing, food is a fundamental human right. There was a time when Republicans agreed with Democrats on that. Sadly, those days are long gone. How can you do this? We're supposed to help people, not screw them over. I yield back.
Thank you, gentleman. Yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Crawford, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your hard work on this, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Dr. Adams for 5 minutes from the state of North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to be clear here about who we're talking about today, because this discussion isn't about budget line items or statistics. We're debating the health and food security of 42.5 million people across the country. That includes 16 million children, 8 million seniors, 4 million Americans with disabilities, and 1.2 million veterans. These are the people who will go hungry if this bill, written by Republicans, succeeds in cutting roughly $300 billion from SNAP. Now, the largest and most successful food security program in the country is SNAP. It's a program that helped cut child poverty in half. It's a program that helped millions of Americans feed their families, a program that saves lives. Republicans plan to make these cuts by kicking people off SNAP at a time when your grocery prices have never been higher, by imposing strict, unrealistic work requirements that will punish our seniors, people with disabilities, and rural Americans, and by forcing states to foot the bill for SNAP while Republicans give that money away to billionaires. And you know it. And while they hide behind claims of fraud to justify their reckless cuts, this bill does nothing to improve SNAP's integrity and security, but rather it creates more victims, families who are trying to keep their children fed, seniors living on fixed incomes, veterans who served our country, single mothers who already are struggling to make the ends meet, working 2 and 3 jobs, and working hard is not enough if you don't make enough, people with disabilities and chronic illnesses, and students trying to build a better life for themselves. This is cruel, and this is shameful. And cutting hundreds of billions of dollars from food assistance does nothing, absolutely nothing, to reduce waste or fraud. All it does is take food away from millions of people who need it, especially children. In my district of Charlotte, North Carolina, over 46,000 households rely on SNAP benefits. Well, that's 1 in 7 families. And if these cuts happen, that's over 46,000 households, families taking care of children and sick and elderly family members who will go hungry. It doesn't stop here. Cutting SNAP benefits will greatly affect our farmers, especially our small and family farms, which make up 96% of all farms in North Carolina. Farmers who are still recovering from the Hurricane Helene disaster and the worst drought on record in my state. And so the people who support us, but we aren't willing to support them. And I've spoken with farmers in my district about SNAP, and they are overwhelmingly supportive of this program. Kim, a farmer in Charlotte, told me, I support SNAP because we're a farm located in a food desert within the city of Charlotte. So how can we feed our most vulnerable if we are unable to take these benefits at our farm stands? Wendy, a farmer also from Charlotte, said to me that we support SNAP because it brings people to our farm who otherwise wouldn't have the chance. And so we support SNAP because it gives small farms like ours a way to serve the community while staying sustainable. Make no mistake, cuts to SNAP will harm farmers in ways that they may not be able to recover. And this bill is Robin Hood in reverse, plain and simple. It takes from the poor, gives to the rich, and it's poor form, it's terrible policy, and it's bad politics. And we ought to be writing a bipartisan bill that includes those who work to fight the righteous fight against hunger and champion programs that support this nation's farmers. This is not a red issue. It's not a blue issue. It's a red, white, and blue issue. It's an American issue, and we ought to be writing a bill that will lower costs for everyday Americans, something that the reconciliation bill is robbing us of. This is a terrible bill. I'm ashamed of this committee, these Republicans, for putting this bill forward. I urge my colleagues to vote no with me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady, and now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Dr. Desjardins, for 5 minutes.
I'd like to thank the chairman and the Ag Committee staff for doing their part to deliver to the American people the agenda that was voted on, and I yield back.
Gentleman, thank the gentleman. He yields back. Now recognize the gentlelady from Connecticut, Mrs. Hayes, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Tonight, we will see that hunger is a policy choice. As the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Nutrition and Foreign Agriculture, I was not surprised by the text of this bill. Since I joined the Ag Committee 6 years ago, the Republicans on this committee have tried time and time again to take food away from hungry children and families. For a small moment, I was lulled into false comfort by claims by members on the other side and even the chairman that they would not take food away from our most vulnerable. I would argue that an 8-year-old is among the most vulnerable. This bill spells those cuts out. This reconciliation bill makes over $300 billion in cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, the most efficient and effective anti-poverty program in this country. 42 million Americans are at risk of having their SNAP benefits cut, including 390,000 individuals from Connecticut. 80% of SNAP households include a child, senior, or disabled person. The budget reconciliation bill we are considering threatens the SNAP eligibility of these individuals by imposing state cost-sharing provisions, expanding work requirements, and stopping future revaluations of the Thrifty Food Plan. States will be forced to make tough budget decisions, including potentially reducing SNAP benefits or eligibility. The legislation also stops the Thrifty Food Plan reauthorization, which is used to determine the amount of benefits a SNAP recipient receives. In 2021, the revaluation was the first in the history of SNAP, and it increased the purchasing power of the plan by 21%. This led to an increase of $1.40 per person per day in average benefits. That update lifted 2 million people out of poverty, including more than 1 million children. You see, hunger is a policy choice, and this bill proves it. This bill expands work requirements for older adults up to age 65 and parents and households with children over 7 years old. 4 million children between the ages of 7 and 17 live in households that would be at risk of losing some food assistance under this proposal, with no language for exceptions. No childcare? Oh well. Your child has a disability? Figure it out. You'll still lose benefits. Children are children, and it is cruel to limit food assistance to families with minor children. These policies will have an impact on all aspects of our economy. In my state of Connecticut, a donor state that gives more to the federal government than we get back, 2,500 retailers are at risk of losing revenue because of these SNAP cuts. If SNAP benefits are decreased, revenue to farmers decrease. Furthermore, these cuts will not reduce the deficit. This proposal seeks to steal money from SNAP to support tax cuts for the wealthiest in this country. The $300 billion that they're taking will not pay down the deficit. They want to use that money to fund tax cuts for able-bodied billionaires. We cannot abandon these families. We cannot abandon these children. I will be voting no on this bill, and I implore my colleagues to vote against this bill as well and get back to the table working on a farm bill that actually supports farmers and families. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank for you and all the hard work of the staff on this committee to get us here. A couple elements I want to talk about in the bill here that are important to note, and I'm really pleased that we were able to finally include the what's known as the secure rural schools aspect of it. That's the it's a long time overdue, really, investment in rural America, and it's still being mindful of how we use taxpayer dollars. But secure rural schools originally was set up to compensate for lack of timber receipts that had been a part of a habit in rural areas, mountainous areas, and such. And with the loss of so much timber industry, that was came in as a substitute, and we have to fight for it just about every year now. So a district like mine in Northern California, but so many western states and southern states and many others, this 3-year authorization of the Secure Rural Schools program is a lifeline for places like that in rural areas that used to depend on timber harvest. The federal government owns so much land that counties can't even collect property taxes on that land. For decades, Secure Rural Schools has helped fill the gap for rural counties and school districts hit hard by the decline in federal timber revenues. When that funding lapses, we see real consequences of districts laying off staff, law enforcement cutting back. In some cases, entire schools will be shutting down. Shouldn't be a partisan issue. I don't think it is. It's a matter of fairness. If Washington bureaucrats continue to lock up lands in the West, they need to help fund the basic services these counties require to survive that used to be funded by the timber industry. Long-term, forested counties need a real solution. Restoring the timber industry would do so. But in the meantime, the SRS funding is the only stopgap many have to continue to keep counties afloat. Now, the second piece on the California's, my home state, manipulation of what's called ABOD, the able-bodied adults with dependents, the work requirements for them. So I'll underline that, able-bodied adults without dependents. This bill also makes much needed reform to the SNAP program and ends the longstanding abuse by bureaucrats at USDA as well as at state levels. What congressional intent was has been perverted a lot by those other two. One shining example is with the ABOD population in my home state of California. And I have this map here depicting that the ABODs have a minor work requirement, 80 hours a month of volunteer service or work in order to receive the SNAP benefit. The Congress gave states the ability to exempt these recipients from work requirements if the unemployment reaches 10% in their county. And so that's a fairly high bar. And here you can see on this map, in my home state of California, 2 counties at that time, or currently, reach that 10% mark under that original designation of unemployment. So the Secretary of Agriculture at a point was able to use the vagueness of the law to expand it to being about half the counties in California, not withholding to what congressional intent was when the law was written. So that's how the USDA interpreted it, using vague language about lack of available jobs in that area. So that needs to be tightened up. The third map shows how the state of California, in its magnificence sometimes, has manipulated completely that policy by allowing every single ABOD to be exempt from work requirements by just declaring the whole state, all 58 counties, as being in a lacking of jobs mode. So this reconciliation bill focuses the SNAP program on those who actually need it, puts an end to the backdoor nonsense that lets states like California game the system, use federal dollars to reward people for not working. I think most people common sensibly would say, if you're able to work, you don't have a situation where you have to take care of somebody at home, then you need to be pursuing a higher education, volunteerism, or an actual job after a period of time, 3 months. That is not unreasonable. Yet here we are, we'll be caterwauling over it for most of the evening and probably tomorrow over that as one of the aspects of the bill. And you just ask ordinary Americans out there who are busting it themselves on how they have to pay for their own issues and see that the ABOD has been manipulated so heavily, especially in my home state of California, to what that red map looks right there. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the time. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Now recognize Ms. Brown from Ohio for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are a few things I can count on from you, and one of them is a prayer to open this meeting. As a Bible-believing Christian myself, I feel led to remind this praying body of a few scriptures. Isaiah 58:7, it reads, "Share your food with the hungry and help those in trouble." Another is Proverbs 22:9, "He who has a generous eye will be blessed, for he gives of his bread to the poor." And the ever-popular Matthew 25:35, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat." Now, based on this legislation, it seems you may have forgotten these verses, or perhaps they are unfamiliar to you. Because this legislation is more than just a debate over line items, it is a statement about our values. Now, don't get me wrong, I appreciate prayers just as much as the next believer, but I also know the book of James tells us faith without works is dead. So let's get to work. Let's do our jobs, because the Bible is not just a book of recommendations, it is an instruction manual on how we should live our lives. See, you have the ability to make a difference, but the message coming from my Republican colleagues is not only deeply disturbing, it is un-American, unrealistic, unreasonable, and ungodly. See, at a time when 47 million people in this country are food insecure, they have decided it is more important to line the pockets of billionaires than feed hungry kids, seniors, veterans, people with disabilities, and working families. Let's call it what it is. It is a reverse Robin Hood, taking food away from those who need it most, not because we have to, but because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would rather give tax handouts to the ultra-wealthy. If enacted, this would mark the largest food cut assistance in history. The worst part, it doesn't have to be this way. See, the plan that cuts food assistance for millions will give millionaires tax breaks. The same plan that cuts hundreds of billions from SNAP will give $1 trillion in tax cuts for the wealthiest 1%. The same plan that targets the $6 average daily benefit SNAP provides delivers a $300,000 annual tax cut to people making nearly $4 million each year. That's not fiscal responsibility, it is cruelty. See, in Ohio alone, this scheme would cost taxpayers roughly $534 million annually, 4 times more than what we pay now. And that's not to expand benefits or improve outcomes. That's just to maintain the status quo. To cover the costs, Ohio, along with every other state, is going to have to make brutal trade-offs. It's going to mean cutting K-12 education funding, scaling back opioid and mental health treatment programs, reducing Medicaid coverage, or putting off critical infrastructure repairs. It's going to mean fewer teachers in classrooms, fewer public health nurses in clinics, and fewer resources for seniors, veterans, people with disabilities, and children. And let's be clear, SNAP doesn't support low-income urban communities like the one I represent. It's a lifeline for rural communities too. It helps families in small towns keep food on the table. It supports local and independent grocers, and it helps farmers by ensuring stable demand for the food they grow. These cuts will devastate rural communities from southeast Ohio and western Wisconsin to northern Pennsylvania. And no, the crumbs included from the Farm Bill programs won't make up for it. That's just a bait and switch. Make no mistake, this bill will undermine rural economies, and it will undermine the agricultural communities already walking a financial tightrope that this committee is meant to support. We were sent here to serve the people. Another verse in Mark 10:45, which tells us the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life for many. I believe that high calling is for us to serve. If we are to be called ourselves Christians, which is to be like Christ, then we should serve all the people, not just the wealthy and the well-off and the well-connected. If this Congress has the money to fund tax breaks for those who have yachts and private jets, then it can afford to feed the 14 million hungry children in this country. I urge my colleagues to think long and hard about this vote. Perhaps you should pray about it. Your fate, your future, and people's lives depend on it.
Gentlelady yields back. We now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Rouser, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to commend you for your leadership in pulling this bill together, and particularly the great work of the Ag Committee staff. This is a very good bill that makes key investments in American agriculture and also ensures better use of the funding for SNAP as it was originally intended. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Ms. Davids from Kansas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you to our ranking member as well. Right now, Kansas families and across the country are feeling the pinch of rising costs, in large part due to this administration's reckless policies. Prices are up, retirement savings are down, tariffs are impacting farmers, and for many, one unexpected bill could push them into crisis. This is not the time for us to pull the rug out from under folks who are doing their best to make ends meet. Yet, that is exactly what this partisan Republican budget process does. Deep, harmful cuts to programs like Medicaid and food assistance, programs that help keep people afloat during some of the toughest times in their lives. Republicans have indicated that their goal is to secure $1 trillion in federal cuts. But nonpartisan experts have said that they cannot reach that goal without taking health care and food away from millions of parents, kids, seniors, pregnant women, veterans, and people with disabilities. I am absolutely for government efficiency. I want the federal government to work better. I'm looking for us to be fiscally responsible. But this budget proposal that's been pushed by the Trump administration has real consequences that real people are going to feel. It includes cuts that could force rural hospitals to close, cuts that would mean empty dinner plates for families that are already struggling. But don't take it from me. Take it from Robert, who lives in Lewisburg in Kansas, who wrote into my office. He said, and I quote, "To pay for massive tax giveaways to billionaires and wealthy corporations, these budget proposals would slash programs that help everyday families afford food, healthcare, childcare, housing, education, and more." He continued by saying families shouldn't have to take hit after hit while billionaires get even more tax breaks. Enough is enough. I could not agree more, Robert. This budget doesn't rein in waste. It doesn't close corporate loopholes, and it doesn't go after fraud. What it does is protect tax breaks for billionaires and big corporations, and is asking struggling families to foot the bill for that. And on top of it, it would likely add hundreds of billions of dollars to the deficit. I was raised by a single mom who served in the Army for 20 years, enlisted. And I can tell you that my family, my brothers and I, who she raised by herself, know what it looks like and feels like to live paycheck to paycheck. I know what these programs mean for families like mine, and we should be working to make them stronger and more fair, not slashing them to reward the wealthiest people in this country. Kansans deserve smart policies that protect our economy, support hardworking people, and actually reduce fraud and waste, not rushed cuts that leave our communities hungrier, sicker, and further behind. I would urge my colleagues, and in this instance, actually plead with my colleagues to please reject these reckless cuts. This body can do better than what we have been seeing. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
Thanks, young lady. She yields back. And I recognize the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Kelly, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank you and your staff for your hard work on this bill. I will be supporting this bill, and with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentlelady from Oregon, Ms. Salinas, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Craig. I'd like to start by setting the record straight about what SNAP is and who it helps. SNAP is an essential program that ensures millions of Americans won't go hungry. Contrary to what my Republican colleagues want us to believe, the vast majority of adults enrolled in SNAP actually participate in the workforce, sometimes holding 2 or 3 jobs at a time and still struggling to make ends meet. What's more, the average family only receives about $6 a day in food assistance. So there is nothing extravagant about this program. But for so many Americans, that $6 makes all the difference. It means not having to wonder about where your next meal will come from. It means being able to make rent this month and not having to worry about losing your home. We are talking about basic human needs here. And yet, my Republican colleagues are fast-tracking $290 billion in tax cuts to this critical program. For what? Just so they can give tax breaks to billionaires. These massive cuts will be devastating for working families and local economies. Almost 800,000 Oregonians could lose their ability to put food on the table for their families, including nearly 46,000 families alone just in my district. Among those who rely on SNAP in my state, approximately 200,000 are children, 120,000 are seniors, and 33,000 are veterans. Without assistance from SNAP, many of these folks will be forced to rely on local food banks and pantries to feed their families. But food banks and pantries are already struggling and won't be able to fill the gap. In 2024, food banks served over 70 million meals to Oregonians in need. And to make matters worse, the Trump administration has decided to terminate the local food purchase assistance program, which pays farmers to provide food directly to local food banks, leaving Oregon growers out to dry and our food banks without enough supply to meet demand. Speaking of farmers, let's not forget that gutting SNAP would eliminate $30 billion in revenue and take away a key source of income for America's small family farms. And it would threaten thousands of mom-and-pop grocery stores and small businesses that are supported by SNAP purchases in those rural economies. These actions are intentionally cruel and wholly unacceptable. Instead of working to lower costs and helping American families right now, the Republican Party, led by President Trump, is working to keep Americans hungry. Republicans want to disguise these cuts as cost shares with states, but the reality is that states simply cannot afford to take on this extra burden. Oregon would have to come up with around $400 million to cover the state portion of benefits under this Republican proposal, and that doesn't include any of the administrative costs. As a former member of the state legislature myself, I know this is not feasible. And let's be abundantly clear, we must remain vigilant to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse. But there is nothing in this bill that would bring us closer to that goal. There is nothing in this bill to protect seniors from getting their benefits stolen by scammers or prevent fraudulent enrollment in multiple states. Instead, all this bill does is create more needless suffering and financial pain for millions of Americans who are already struggling to get by. In closing, this Republican reconciliation package is an outrageous attempt to help the rich get even richer on the backs of hardworking families. I cannot stand for it. And to my Republican friends on the other side of the aisle, I care about farmers, I care about small business owners, I care about seniors, veterans, children, and people with disabilities, and I know you do too. You should vote against this shameful legislation. Our constituents are counting on us to make their lives more affordable, and this bill does not achieve that. It does the exact opposite. I urge my colleagues to vote no, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've watched you work really hard the last couple of months in ensuring that we take care of those who need the help the most, and also help people get a hand up. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Davis, for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and to the ranking member and to the committee. I'm here, and I always remain focused on why I'm here, and that's to work and fight for the people of Eastern North Carolina, North Carolina's 1st Congressional District, 22 counties, all rural. I hear so many concerns from those in Eastern North Carolina, and in particular rural America. Those concerns that I hear often, one, when are we going to get a farm bill? I may hear that all the time, no matter where I go, no matter the time of the week. I also hear quite often about AWR. I mean, farmers are really, really concerned about the rising costs, in particular with labor. I also hear in North Carolina about rural development in particular. There are a lot of fire departments that I hear from. They're seeking help and assistance. And in North Carolina, out west, we've definitely been hit by Helene, and there's great need for assistance, and I will always speak up for Western North Carolina. But in the east, we've been hit hard by drought, and we're in dire need of assistance. This is real, y'all. There are a lot of farmers that are at the wit's end, and they keep taking it over and over, and they're just at a breaking point. So I'm here to continue to convey points and things that I hear from my agriculture community. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Boss, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say thank you to you as a chairman. I know there's been a lot of hard work put into this. I also want to say thank you to the staff. A tremendous amount of work has been done. I believe we are moving in the right direction with this, and with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentlelady from Hawaii, Ms. Takuda, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member. Every one of us on this committee knows food is not just a commodity. It is survival, it is dignity, it is community, it is hope. We are here because we believe in investing in rural America, in food security, and in giving every single American, no matter their zip code, a fair shot at the American dream. And yet here we are, debating a bill that turns its back on those very principles. This bill doesn't just trim around the edges, it guts SNAP, one of the most effective anti-hunger, anti-poverty programs we have. SNAP puts food on the tables for working families, children, seniors, veterans, and persons with disabilities. It supports local economies, yes, including farmers, ranchers, and rural grocers who rely on that spending to stay afloat. So let's call this what it is: a cruel, calculated choice, a false choice that takes food away from hungry families on a larger scale than ever before in our history, all to give more tax breaks to billionaires. That's not good policy. That's abandonment. And let's be clear, this choice is not just morally indefensible, it is a betrayal of the oath we took to uphold the Constitution. Article 1 charges us to promote the general welfare, not the interests of a privileged few. This choice is not just wrong, it violates the most basic promises of our democracy. We were not sent here to serve the wealthy. We were sent here to serve everyone. Just last week, I stood at the Maui Food Bank. I saw pallets of rice, cans of vegetables, boxes ready to be handed to neighbors in need. Before the pandemic, they served 13,000 people a month. Today, 42,000. 40% of them are children. That's nearly the entire population of a small town lining up regularly for basic sustenance to put food on their tables. And after the devastating Lahaina wildfires, as federal aid has dried up, demand has surged by over 65%. These families aren't lazy. They're not looking for handouts. They're not liars or cheaters looking to defraud the government. They are survivors of fires, of economic hardship, of systems that too often overlook them. They're hardworking, honest Americans trying to get back on their feet. What they need is not less help. They need more. In my district alone, SNAP serves over 28,000 households, 1 in 8 families. Over half of them include children, seniors, or someone living with a disability. This bill would cut tens of millions of dollars from Hawaii SNAP benefit. And that's not just a line item on a budget. That's a child going to bed hungry. That's a grandma or grandpa choosing between their medication or meals. That's a working mom skipping dinner so her kids can eat. As a mother, it breaks my heart, and I can't even imagine voting for legislation that would rip food from the mouths of our children. And as a lawmaker, I cannot justify passing a bill that decimates local economies under the false flag of fiscal responsibility. We know that nutrition and farm policy move together or not at all. Yes, we need to renew key programs that help farmers stay afloat in the face of disasters, climate change, and global insecurity. But we can't do that by sacrificing the food security of millions of Americans. That's not leadership. That's cruelty. And we are better than this. My colleagues, I know you are all here because you care deeply about your communities. I do too. And I still believe we can find common ground on a bipartisan farm bill that meets this moment. But that starts now by rejecting these callous cuts to SNAP and reminding us all who we serve, not any one single administration, but the people. It starts by standing up for our farmers and our families, for food producers and our children, for a system that works for all of us, not just the wealthy few. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member. I yield back.
Thank you, lady. Yields back. Now recognize Dr. Baird for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Craig. I really appreciate you hosting this reconciliation markup, and I thank the entire House Agricultural Committee, including the staff, for their hard work on this bill. I will be brief, but I do want to mention that I'm excited that we are getting the federal spending back on track and root out the waste, fraud, and abuse that has skyrocketed over the past 4 years. I believe we have a real opportunity to do the right thing for the American people. This committee is playing a critical role in enacting President Trump's successful agenda and reducing our federal deficit. Extending the Trump tax cuts is critical for our families, our farmers, producers, and every American that wants to put food on their table. If we do not get this bill over the finish line, over 62% of the tax filers will face substantial tax increases in 2026. This bill will also allow us to support our farmers, producers, and ensure rural Americans can thrive. I am excited that we are about to make history and deliver our promise to the American people to restore fiscal sanity and make Washington work for every American. I look forward to our markup tonight, and I look forward to working with my colleagues here over the coming days to pass President Trump's one big, beautiful bill. I thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Budzinski, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Craig. Mr. Chairman, 1 year ago today, not today, but a year ago, I sat in this room and shared my disappointment over the proposed farm bill. I regret to say that that disappointment has only grown. Not only am I troubled by the content of the bill we are marking up today, but also the fact that select farm bill provisions are being rolled into a partisan package built on the backs of our most vulnerable neighbors. I want to echo my Democratic colleagues who have called out the reckless dismantlement of SNAP in this package. We know, based on data, that SNAP is a program that enables economic mobility and allows hardworking families a chance at a better life. I take very serious issue with the idea of demonizing SNAP recipients and of claims this is a fraudulent program. It simply is not. Democrats have opposed SNAP cuts for decades. We have spoken out against them in past reconciliation processes, in past farm bills, and for the entirety of the 119th Congress leading up to this markup. It has never been a secret that we are going to stand up against SNAP cuts, and to the tune of over $300 billion. This will take away food for SNAP households that are home to a child, an older adult, or a disabled adult. And for what? To pay for tax cuts for the wealthiest people in this country? It is unconscionable. I know what you all have said. It's not a cut. It's a cost shift. It's not a cut. It's a reduction in future benefits. It's not a cut. It's changing program access. Just because you say something over and over again doesn't make it true. You pursued these cuts in a historically bipartisan committee, knowing what it would do to our ability to work together. You've created a partisan package, intentionally boxing out Democrats, and then put part of the farm bill in it. What kind of sham process is this? Our families and our farmers deserve better. Last year's bill was partisan, geographic as a package that pitted farmers against the people that feed and picked favorites among programs. I won't spend much time of my opening remarks harping on this, but I do want to point out one glaring omission from this bill compared to last year's farm bill. Last year, the Farm Bill eliminated the Secretary's discretionary authority to utilize the Commodity Credit Corporation to respond to natural disasters, market failures, and other important matters. Republicans on this committee claimed a $50 billion savings and voted against a Democratic amendment objecting to it. It's interesting that now the CCC is left intact. Shortly after the administration launched a needless trade war impacting the markets our farmers need. Last time President Trump was in office, USDA spent over $25 billion in taxpayer money for the CCC to correct it. I object to imploding a bipartisan coalition of interests for our farmers, our working families, and the rural communities that rely on Farm Bill programs to sustain them. There is no reason why we could not have come to the table to build a bipartisan farm bill in regular order. Failing to do that will have a years-long consequence. Despite this committee's history of cooperation and bipartisanship, Democrats have been completely shut out of this hyper-partisan process. When we leave this markup, I can tell the farmers in my district, I fought for you. I can look with my neighbors in the eyes and say, I fought for you. Unfortunately, not everybody in this room will be able to do the same thing. Thank you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Mann, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson, for holding today's markup and for your leadership in crafting this legislation that will help revitalize a farm economy for those who feed, clothe, and fuel the world, not just in the big first district of Kansas, but across the country, all while faithfully stewarding taxpayer dollars, reducing the deficit, and creating opportunities for more people to benefit from the dignity of work and achieve the American dream. This bill makes crucial investments to support the farmers, ranchers, and ag producers of the big first and across rural America. Farmers are struggling, with production costs up over 30% and commodity prices relatively low, and they're in desperately need of some degree of relief. We aren't going to solve all their problems with this legislation, but we can help provide them with some certainty by updating reference prices, expanding access to crop insurance, and increasing investment in export promotion programs. This bill does exactly that, and it will help ensure a safe, reliable, and stable food supply for years to come. This legislation also allows us to be forward thinking about the needs of the agriculture community by directing funds to areas with a high return on investment, including by addressing the deferred maintenance backlog at our land-grant universities like Kansas State University for vital ag research, and protecting consumers and producers through livestock biosecurity that can fend off growing threats like the New World screwworm. And just as important as is the work this legislation does to protect and preserve SNAP for those who need it most and to ensure that we have a strong safety net for generations to come. We aren't here today making these reforms to SNAP just because we believe they are more efficient or because they will save us money. We are pursuing these changes because it is wrong to jeopardize the benefits of the single mom taking care of kids too young to be in school or the disabled and or elderly in order to subsidize someone who is perfectly capable of making an honest income but isn't willing to join the workforce. By definition, these are able-bodied adults without dependents. These changes will ensure that these individuals are served by the program that it was intended, not as a couch that you can sit on as long as you want, but as a true safety net that gets you back on the ladder of opportunity and back into a job where you can experience the dignity of work and have a shot at the American dream. The world doesn't wait for Congress to act, and global competitors continue to grow stronger every day. Failure is not an option. Agriculture is the backbone of our country, supporting the nation's food security and trade, food security, trade, and overall economic strength. And today we have in front of us an opportunity to provide our farmers, ranchers, and ag producers with certainty, fairness, and the tools they need to keep feeding, clothing, and fueling America. Now is the time for this committee to step up and deliver for them. Passing this bill is a commitment to rural America and to the future of American agriculture, and I look forward to supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Sorensen, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to our ranking member as well. Seems that half of the Republicans walked out on our opening statements. You want work requirements and you can't even show up for work. Why are you taking taxpayers' salaries if you can't even sit here and listen to opening statements? For the past 4 months, neighbors from Rockford to Bloomington have reached out to me on every platform, worried about where we are today and where we're going. There is one thing that connects every conversation that I've had. It's the uncertainty that this administration is giving to the people back home, the people who are struggling to keep up. All the while, the rich get richer, and the middle class and middle America are left out. Uncertainty how tariffs will impact the ability to put food on the table. Uncertainty if your school will be defunded, or if their federal job at the Rock Island Arsenal is going to be eliminated tomorrow. Uncertainty if you can afford a prescription, or worse, a trip to a hospital if the worst thing happens. Uncertainty if federal funding awarded to improve our crumbling infrastructure will ever get dispersed. Uncertainty if businesses, small businesses, will be able to keep up. And uncertainty for single parents to put food on the table for their kids tomorrow. But we know for certain that SNAP has proven to be a necessity for children, for veterans, for senior citizens in my district and yours. As uncertainty is set to grind our economy to a halt, this GOP bill intends to kick the cost to states who are not financially able, nor were they intended to carry the weight. The state of Illinois will falter. And let me be clear, this is not Chicago. This is Lanark, Rio, Farmington, Altona, and Winnebago, Illinois, all forced into uncertainty. It's also the senior citizen shopping at Mercer Market in Aledo, Illinois, in your district, Congresswoman Miller. It's the single mom working a double shift at the Burger Nook in Herrin, Illinois, in your district, Mr. Bost. If this was really about waste, fraud, and abuse, we would be finding ways to make SNAP work more efficiently. But make no mistake, this committee is taking a hatchet job to SNAP. Instead of passing a 5-year farm bill that will actually give rural Americans and our farmers what they need, certainty. To my friends across the aisle, I hope conscience speaks to you tonight. I hope you can hear the whispers of the hungry people in your district tonight who are saying, what about me? Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Mrs. Miller from Illinois for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your work, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Vasquez, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson. Thank you, Ranking Member Craig. This committee has historically come together across party lines to support farmers and families. But today, I'm ashamed that we're throwing that legacy aside to gut SNAP, one of the most effective anti-hunger programs in our country. And I'm not just ashamed. Just like the constituents in my district, I'm angry. I'm angry because some members of this committee are taking food off the table from the families I represent in southern New Mexico. In my district, 1 in 4 families rely on SNAP to have something to eat every day. These are hardworking Americans, families that I've personally visited. These are kids that I personally served when I spent years volunteering for my local food pantry. Now, don't just take it from me. I want you to hear it from them. They're scared that even in these dire economic straits, you're about to make them go hungry. That's why they shared with me these empty plates. This includes an elder from Isleta Pueblo who relies on SNAP after chemotherapy and cancer treatment damage her vision that prevents her from working. This includes a grandmother with 3 grandchildren who wrote to me, I ask you, I beg you to not take away this much needed assistance from families who depend on this help to survive. And this also includes a mother whose SNAP benefits are already delayed, who said being able to afford everything my family needs is hard, and despite working, relies on SNAP to feed her 3 children. Gutting SNAP doesn't just hurt these hardworking families who use it. It hurts rural grocery stores that depend on SNAP through a local food hub. It hurts small farmers. It hurts a small town cashier who will get laid off when SNAP dollars disappear, and they'll have to rely on SNAP too, if they can even qualify. Now, I recently visited Saucedo Supermarket in Lordsburg, New Mexico, the only grocery store in a 30-mile radius, run by a tight-knit family that took over the family business. Without SNAP, which accounts for 80% of their business, they told me they'd likely close. If rural areas like this, losing a grocery store means families go hungry. SNAP isn't just a safety net. It's infrastructure for healthy families and for our economy. In my district alone, we have 592 food retailers, including 12 farmers markets who depend on SNAP. It keeps shelves stocked, it pays workers, and it helps our growers keep growing year after year. So let me be clear about what's happening here. In this committee, some are proposing taking $300 billion out of the hands of working, hungry families. And down the hall, my colleagues across the aisle in Energy and Commerce are cutting Medicaid and health care. Also that the majority in Ways and Means can give more tax breaks to the wealthy. Honestly, who do we all work for? I work for the good, hardworking people of New Mexico, honest Americans struggling to make ends meet. This isn't reform. This isn't fiscal responsibility. This is theft, plain and simple. And it's rural families, it's veterans, it's seniors, farmers and ranchers who are footing the bill. But it's not just SNAP cuts that concern me. It's the fact that by going down this road, we're abandoning the Farm Bill. And with it, every farmer who's counting on specialty crop programs, conservation dollars, and certainty for the next 5 years. Mr. Chairman, the people in my district didn't send me here to watch their livelihoods get turned into bargaining chips. They sent me here to fight for them, to fight for their basic needs, for rural businesses, and for our farmers. That's exactly what I'm going to keep doing. I think you all should too. I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Moore, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your leadership on this and the committee staff as well. And with that, I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Jackson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I want to begin by affiliating myself with the remarks of my colleagues for their insightful remarks and for lifting the data that confirms what many of us already know. SNAP works. The statistics are compelling. Millions of Americans rely upon it, and millions are lifted out of poverty because of it. I rise today in strong agreement with these facts. Today, I am before you not just as a member of Congress, but as a witness to the soul of a nation still struggling with the weight of its conscience. I come not only to speak of policy, but of principle. I rise in the defense of those whom society too often leaves voiceless: the poor, the worker, the mother, and the child. We are here to consider whether this nation, blessed with more than sufficient resources, shall extend its hand to feed those who are hungry. This is not a question of economics alone, but a question of morality, of whether the ideals that form the bedrock of our democracy shall rise above the shifting sands of political expediency and party loyalty. You see, the Holy Scriptures tell us that when Jesus fed the multitudes, the text records 5,000 men, and then it quietly adds, not including women and children. Even in the sacred recounting of a miracle, women and children are counted last, if at all. But I am here to stand to count them first. We cannot continue to ignore the daily realities of women standing in line at food pantries, children going to school with stomachs aching from hunger, while others in this country are trying to colonize space. We cannot continue to neglect workers, yes, workers struggling to feed families on wages too thin to stretch from week to week. Let me tell you about Angela, a single mother in the 1st Congressional District of Illinois. Angela works full-time as a nursing assistant. She leaves before the sun rises, cares for patients with dignity and tenderness, and gets home just in time to help her son with homework. But even with the job, she relies on SNAP to keep food on the table, not because she's lazy, not because she's gaming the system, but because her paycheck alone can't cover rent, child care, utilities, and groceries in today's economy. She doesn't want to stay on SNAP. She wants to build a better life, and SNAP is the bridge she walks to get there. So I ask you today, how many of you have depended upon SNAP? How many in this building, your staffers, your interns, the cafeteria workers who serve your meals, the people that clean our offices, the janitors, that quietly rely upon food assistance? Maybe you say, I don't know any. I would challenge you. Then ask. Talk to the people. They're invisible right in front of your very eyes. Let's be honest, people aren't proud of needing help. They want dignity. They want opportunity. They want to work hard and take care of their children. They want to leave these programs behind, not because they were pushed off, but because they no longer need them. That's what we should be doing and working towards. And yet in this hour, I see a bitter contradiction. We are told we can't afford to feed the poor, but somehow we can afford to extend the 2017 tax cuts for the rich. We scrutinize the poor mother's grocery list while turning a blind eye to billionaires' tax breaks. We demand accountability from the working poor, but none from the wealthy elite. The cost of these extended tax cuts is $1.9 trillion. Imagine that, $1.9 trillion. $1.9 trillion can cancel all of student debt in this country. It could end the housing crisis for millions of families. It could fully fund our schools, repair our infrastructure, and yes, feed every child hungry in America. Let me help you visualize this. 1 million seconds is roughly 11.7 days. 1 billion seconds is roughly 31 years. 1 trillion seconds is roughly 31,000 years. That's 1 trillion seconds. And we're talking about almost $2 trillion in tax cuts. Make no mistake, hunger is not caused by laziness, it's caused by policy. SNAP is not a handout, it's a hand up. It's not a weakness of character, it's a show of strength of community. It's not welfare, it's a lifeline. It is hope wrapped in the dignity of food. May we also cherish these workers. Let us support the programs that make it possible for them to survive. We say we value children, then let us feed them. Let us believe in liberty, and then let us also prove it by making sure that no one has to choose between rent and food. History teaches us that a nation that forgets the least of these is a nation already in decline. And I yield back, and I thank you, Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. Now recognize the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Finstead, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your leadership on this, and I also want to thank the staff for all of the amazing work that they have done. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I recognize the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Andor, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Access to healthy food is like getting health care at your doctor's office. It's necessary for a thriving America. But at a time when everyone is struggling with the cost of living, Donald Trump and House Republicans want to take $313 billion in food away from veterans, seniors, and children, all to give billionaire like Elon Musk yet another tax cut. I know the struggles our SNAP families are facing because I faced them myself. Growing up in southern India, food insecurity was a regular part of my life. The $6 a day that SNAP provides in benefits is a lifeline to American families that we cannot afford to cut. 42 million Americans, including young children, single mothers, Americans with disabilities, and seniors on a fixed income, rely on this basic needs program to survive. These astronomical cuts will permanently weaken the SNAP program, making it much harder for these vulnerable groups to keep the American dream alive. Investing in food assistance isn't just the right thing to do. It also grows the American economy. For every dollar invested in food assistance, $1.50 in economic activity is created. Additionally, SNAP supports nearly 400,000 jobs in trucking, manufacturing, warehousing, and on farms. As we need to protect these critical programs for generations to come, is for Republicans to put their constituents above Donald Trump. I urge my Republican colleagues to finally listen to their constituents and vote against this bill that, in a world of increasing uncertainty, will permanently weaken SNAP and take away critical food assistance from young children, seniors on a fixed income, and other vulnerable groups. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Rose, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to your staff for the diligent time and effort you have all contributed to getting us to this critical point. This is a pivotal moment for our country and the livelihood of American farmers. We are long past due for identifying and extracting the waste, fraud, and abuse that has plagued society, and we are disappointingly late in securing support for the backbone industry of the U.S., American agriculture. I am proud to stand up for the folks of Tennessee's 6th District who are sick and tired of their hard-earned tax dollars being funneled to programs of the federal government saturated with waste, fraud, and abuse. It is time for everyone to do their part and restore the integrity of the American dream. More than 77 million Americans gave President Trump a mandate on November 5th to get America back on track. And this legislation is another step in the right direction to deliver on that mandate. This legislation will improve the efficacy of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, helping to assure that those in need can continue to receive the assistance they need while holding states accountable and developing the necessary resources, directing the necessary resources to our forgotten producers in rural America. Passing this legislation will be a historic accomplishment, and I look forward to doing my part. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. He goes back. Now I recognize Mr. Gray from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, the Farm Bill has always been a bipartisan effort. And I find myself incredibly disappointed that my Republican colleagues have made the choice for this to be a partisan exercise. In a time when farmers are dealing with economic uncertainty, created in part by the current administration's haphazard tariff policy, they need stability and the support of a well-thought-out farm bill. This unserious attempt to repackage agricultural policies into reconciliation is a sorry substitute. In the 5 counties I represent, crops have an estimated value of $21.7 billion annually, one of the largest ag districts in this country. This bill excludes investments for specialty crop insurance, rural development, forestry, and various other critical programs. Some of my colleagues across the aisle will tell you that they are planning on fulfilling the remaining needs of farmers through a skinny farm bill later this year. But by making this partisan, Republicans have destroyed the coalition that makes Senate passage of a farm bill possible. You know, it's funny, since arriving in Washington, D.C. this past January, you would think that people have too much health care, too much food. Food prices are too cheap. Everybody's doing so much winning that they needed the Republicans to come along and do something about it. Instead, what I've found is randomly fired workers at the USDA, Bureau of Reclamation, runs our water system in California, tariffs that seem to change every single day. All of this leading to higher prices on food, longer lines, less service, and apparently this is somebody's idea of making America great again. I live in rural America, where people respect their neighbors and take care of each other. I don't have any neighbors, Democrat or Republican, who think the biggest problem in this country is that somebody is getting a meal they didn't deserve or that too many kids are getting fed. America is a great country with great people, and they certainly deserve a hell of a lot better than this. I hope we can find a way back, a return to a bipartisan process, and do the right thing for our farmers and our communities. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Finster, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson. I want to thank everyone that worked on this bill to put it together. It's quite an incredible bill. I am the second largest egg district in the country, one of the largest when it comes to production of eggs and pork and corn, cattle, and nearly other agricultural aspect, milk also. You know, you look at our farming community and they're struggling economically. They really are. You ask each and every one of them, they don't know how they're going to make the next operational loan payment. We're worried about drought, especially in Iowa, where I'm from, western Iowa. We haven't seen a lot of rain. And this all is a burden. That's why this farm bill and this reconciliation bill are so important. You think about it, it's been 2 years since since the 2018 Farm Bill expired. Today, we're given the opportunity to pass a much-needed relief for our farmers, to make critical investments into our agricultural community, and to support the largest efforts of history to provide relief for all Americans. So let me talk briefly about a couple things that are in this bill that are very important to me. The first bill that's in this bill includes crop insurance for the future farmer. We have to make sure that the next generation farmer can succeed and pay that operational loan. This bill improves the cost of crop insurance for young and beginning farmers and veteran farmers. Number two, this bill increases the opportunity for the export markets, increases and doubling the funds for market access programs and farm-to-market development. So crucial as we figure out where to export our products. Third, in my district, and this is probably most important, it helps invest on the three-legged animal health stool, which funds critical relief to the National Vet Service Lab and National Animal Disaster Centers in Ames, Iowa. We had a massive outbreak of HPAI dissemination of flocks and herds. It's destroying what we have in agriculture. these bills are so crucial. That's why it's time to get this bill passed. And I want to be on the forefront. And finally, I just want to say this, is that we're fighting food insecurity, and it's our goal to make sure that we secure this program called SNAP. It's much overdue. We are here working to fight for this, to make sure that there's no administrative errors that have happened time and time again in many of our states. That's why I led the effort to make sure that there's literally zero errors as we move forward, and this bill will do that. So I want to thank again our chairman and thank everyone that worked on this bill. This is a fantastic bill. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize Ms. McDonald-Rivet for 5 minutes from the state of Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Ranking Member. I want to start by saying that there are some pieces of this bill that I think are important, in particular addressing reference prices, co-op insurance, ag research. Those are things that are critically important to our farmers. And frankly, they're struggling because Congress has failed to do its job for the last couple of years and get a farm bill across the finish line. But I am absolutely going to focus my comments on the SNAP program. You see, my husband and I have raised 6 kids, and I'm a former catechism teacher. So when we start this hearing with a prayer, it seemed right to me. And I spent a considerable time in my community volunteering, did a little bit of work with Meals on Wheels, and I was always the Friday delivery. And the reason I did the Friday delivery is because you didn't just deliver the meal of that day, you also delivered meals for the weekend. And that message that was embedded in me as I would over and over again go to seniors' homes who could not get out, they would ask me to put their weekend meal in the refrigerator. And I would open the refrigerator up, and the meal I was putting in there was the only thing inside. Because hunger is a very real thing. And for me, I'm Midwest practical. I'm Midwest common sense. When people are hungry, we feed them. We had a hearing right here in this room a couple of weeks ago about SNAP. There's some truths here that are not getting out. One is that the fraud rate in SNAP is less than 1%. The other truth that's really important to understand is that able-bodied adults are currently required to work. So are there error rates in the states? Sure. Should we address it? Absolutely. But the idea that we are going to find $300 billion of cuts, $300 billion of cuts on that small percentage of people who are not working that are already required to, or error rates in the states, is just a flat-out lie. What we are really doing is cutting food for people, and in my state, most of them are children. So this isn't about the great big beautiful bill. It's not about a balance sheet. It's not about the farmers. It's about the percentage of hungry children we are willing to tolerate in this country. The requirement that if you have a child in your house over the age of 7, that you have to work, even if that child is disabled, is cold. It is cruel. It is heartless. And it also tells me you've never talked to a family with a disabled child and what that does to a family. We are talking about $6 a day. So when we are sitting in a committee room representing the people that we represent that have brought us here, we cannot invoke the name of Jesus Christ and say we are doing his work when we are pulling food off the plates of children.
Amen.
I yield back.
Amen.
Generally yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Jackson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am proud to be here today with my Republican colleagues as we deliver another win for the American people by taking significant steps to accomplish President Trump's agenda and restore accountability and public trust in our federal programs. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and your hardworking staff for making this possible. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Figures, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
When I joined the House Ag Committee, I did so because of the critical importance of agriculture to my district, to my state, and the historic reputation for bipartisanship on this committee. But today, we risk throwing that all away when we could be working in a bipartisan way to support our farmers, to support our nation's agriculture industry. We're throwing it away. Look, agriculture is not just a line item in the budget for me. It's the backbone of the economy in the state of Alabama. It is a lifeline for rural communities across my district. And it's a safeguard for families on the edge of poverty and for some already in poverty. This committee has long recognized that feeding the nation is too fundamental to be driven by party lines, but we are backing away from that understanding today. Look, an effective farm bill means that a family farmer can keep their farm, it can keep their land, keep their livelihood. It means more people in my home state of Alabama don't slip below the poverty line. It means that, you know, every link in our food supply chain, from the field to the fork, remains strong and resilient. But today, that vital bipartisan foundation is being thrown away, forcing this reconciliation markup, slashing $300 billion from the SNAP program and rushing these cuts. It just disregards the real lives that really hang in the balance of a bipartisan farm bill. You know, the mission of this agricultural committee is well known by the members on the committee, and today, by doing what we're doing to SNAP, we're not honoring that mission. We are going to a place where we're going to literally force constituents to make decisions between putting food on the table or other essential needs. This plan, these cuts, they won't eliminate hunger. They're going to exacerbate hunger. You're going to shift the cost to states in major ways, and you know states cannot afford it. You know they can't. They will not do it. And the sad part about it is we sit here doing this with that understanding in mind. They will not spend the money to replace the SNAP cuts. They will not do it. But yet we are still going headstrong down this path and adding these administrative burdens and other resource cuts. We're going to increase the error rates that we're trying to reduce and further penalize the states for doing that. And so we should really be strengthening the SNAP program, not undermining it. And I take issue with the underlying sentiment that I seem to hear in this room today, that poor people like being poor, that poor people want to be poor. That is, they can take these SNAP benefits and go invest them and go put them in a bank account. That's not what SNAP was designed to do. That's not what they can do. Where do you think the SNAP benefits get spent? They get spent in grocery stores and businesses in our local economies. And so, look, I gave a commencement address just this past weekend in Alabama, and one of the pieces of advice I gave to people was, don't ever forget where you come from. And it's a question I've heard posed many times in my life, and even in a popular song that some people will recognize. They ask me where I'm from and who I do it for. I'm from Alabama, one of the poorest states in this country. I represent one of the poorest districts in this country. The lowest median income in the country is in Alabama, or near the lowest. We cannot be doing this. These are real people, 1 in 4 households. I'm an unfortunate member of that club too. I represent a district where 1 in 4 households in my district are on SNAP benefits. 1 in 4. 1 in 4. Let that sink in. This is a poor place. And unfortunately, that's not just limited to my district. That's shared by other members of this committee in other states. So we have to be real about what we're talking about. You know, I've heard it said that, you know, sometimes your colleagues, they either don't know, they don't show, or they don't care. Well, I refuse to believe that you guys cannot care about poor people. I refuse to believe it. But I know, because I know where I come from, and I know it's only by the grace of God that I am not in that same bucket needing SNAP benefits. Because the Bible tells us the poor will always be with us. But what are we going to do about it? Are we going to help them, or are we going to pull the rug from under them? And unfortunately, right now, we are pulling that rug from under them. And we can do better than this. We should do better than this. There are too many people in this country that live far below the poverty line. And we're too well off to be doing this, literally pulling money from poor people to pay for tax breaks for the wealthiest people in this country. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Now we recognize Mr. Van Orden for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would like to associate myself with one of my colleagues' comments. I do remember where I come from. I come from a broken home raised by a single mother on food stamps when we actually had a stamp that you stuck on a card. So if you think I'm going to do anything to cut benefits and have children or our seniors and the most vulnerable or hungry, you're just wrong. I also find it rather disingenuous when our colleagues are arguing that vociferously that they want to do a bipartisan farm bill when last Congress we did that and only 4 members of this committee on the Democrat side voted for it, 2 of which are here. Thank you very much, Mr. Sorensen and Davis. I appreciate it. So, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you and your staff for doing such a great job, and my staff for doing such a great job, for allowing us to do what our constituents have sent us here to do, and that's to work for our farmers and those most in need amongst us. I'm a very proud Wisconsinite. I represent the 3rd Congressional District, this beautiful agrarian district. And our constituents are counting on us to get this reconciliation bill right, and we did. We got this right. It focuses on 3 areas that are critically important and missing from the SNAP program and some of our agriculture programs. That's transparency, accountability, and sustainability. So with the National Accuracy Clearinghouse, we're able to, states will have to look at other states to see if people are double dipping in these benefits, which is taking place around the country. And every dollar that goes to somebody fraudulently is a dollar that can't go to feed a hungry child. The accountability portion, the error rates. So states are going to have to accept the fact that if they are not administering this program efficiently, that they're going to have to pay a portion of the program that is equitable, and it makes sense, and it is scaled. And then the individual work requirement, people are going to be held accountable for that. This is an 85% issue in the state of Wisconsin. 85% of my fellow Wisconsinites want able-bodied adults without dependents to work at least 20 hours or go to school for 20 hours or have job training for 20 hours. That's not too much to ask. Overpayments, waste, fraud, and abuse have plagued programs like SNAP, and it is statistically impossible to have a program this big and not have fraud involved in it. So when we scale this down, as I've mentioned, it's got to be done in a way that states that are responsibly executing these programs are not being held accountable for states that are not. And for instance, there is a state that has a 59.59% overpayment rate, and my Wisconsinites are not going to pick up that slack. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for working on us to get this right. I sounded the alarm on that, and you listened, and I appreciate it, and so did your staff. So we want to encourage responsible bureaucracies, and I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but it can be done. So the better a state performs, the less their copay will be, and it will be scaled up and down. So if they improve, they're gonna pay less, and that's going to encourage a responsible bureaucracy. So every single dollar that is allocated to these programs goes to the hungry child, it goes to the senior, it goes to those most in need, and I'm very proud that we did that. Our cost-sharing abilities, it's at 5% error rate. That is, as I said, proportional. And we will make sure that the states who are failing understand that, and they have the opportunity to improve, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm also an incredibly strong supporter of ensuring that only eligible American citizens and legal permanent residents receive SNAP benefits. So SNAP is designed to help Americans, as my colleague Mr. Jackson said, giving them a hand up, not a hand out. Our seniors and our low-income families and children who don't know where their next meal is coming, those Americans need to be taken care of. And I am very proud to work with this bill and with this committee to get this bill through. These programs are never designed to incentivize those who had entered the country illegally, and this is an American safety net, and it needs to be so, and it needs to be bold, and it needs to be black and white in law. Finally, I'm pleased to see the inclusion of multiple provisions of the bipartisan farm bill, as Mr. Feintra said, that passed out of the committee in May. Our agriculture workers and producers need certainty. You are correct, Mr. Sorensen, and with reinvestment in our safety nets for our farmers, ag research advancements, Tier 1 dairy cap increase, base acre adjustment. There's just so much goodness in this bill that our farmers need now. We're going to get this done. And I encourage my Democrat colleagues to put aside politics and put the farmers and our seniors and our veterans, of which I am one, ahead of their personal agendas. And Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you again. I want to thank the staffs, my staff, your staff. I want to thank these guys for listening and my fellow colleagues. And let's get this done. for our farmers. With that, God bless America, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Thank the gentleman. Now recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Vindman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the only Virginian on this committee, I'm proud to fight for hardworking families who rely on food assistance and farmers who feed our Commonwealth and our country. Ag is still Virginia's #1 industry. When I listen to families and farmers during my meetings in the 7th Congressional District, they all know one thing is true. Costs are up and won't be coming down anytime soon. The fact that House Republicans want to gut vital programs like SNAP while families face sky-high prices is unconscionable. And this is a partisan reconciliation bill. This is not a farm bill. This is a monstrosity that prioritizes cuts that will hurt families, force rural grocery stores to shutter, and take income away from farmers who rely on these dollars to stay afloat. Think about your local grocery store or farmer's market. Let's say a quarter of the customers are on food assistance, which is common for Virginia. Their grocery store or farmer's market can't keep afloat and now closes for everyone in the community. Last month, I spoke to a farmer, Eugene, who's grappling with his farm's future because of these cuts. Eugene Triplett is a farmer whose family has been farming their land in Culpeper for 5 generations. The produce he grows goes straight to local food banks, kids in nearby public schools, and local churches. The cuts my extreme colleagues are proposing in this partisan bill will take away healthy food from kids, and that's unconscionable. To put it simply, it's cruel and inhumane to cut benefits that feed kids as young as 8 years old. Additional impacts on farmers include a poultry farmer in Orange County who continues to be hit hard by uncertainty and chaos coming from the White House, whose new chicken coop remains half built because grant funding has been withheld. I also spoke to another farmer who shared that input prices like fertilizer increased the day that Russia attacked Ukraine. These costs have not come back down since. Food security is national security. Republicans are trying to ram through a reckless budget proposal that guts food assistance, abandons rural America, and puts working families on the chopping block. Don't let them fool you. Their plan slashes over $300 billion from SNAP, taking away food from children, seniors, veterans, people with disabilities, and those struggling parents. $6 a day. That's how much a carton of eggs costs. $180 per month, roughly. That's not a get-rich-quick scheme. Any claim that it is absurd. The policies in this bill mean that Virginia will be on the hook for $176 million in additional taxes. It's bad for Virginians. While Trump's rubber stamp Republicans are raiding SNAP to fund tax breaks for ultra-rich folks like Elon Musk, they've completely abandoned most of the Farm Bill, including critical investments, rural development, broadband, and clean water. This isn't serious policymaking. It's an attack on hardworking families, and it's cruel. I just want to close on this point. 45 years ago, my family came to the United States with less than $800 between 5 people because this country was a beacon of light. We pursued the American dream, and within less than a generation, I sit here as a refugee that is now representative for 780,000 Americans. This bill makes the American dream less likely today than it was 45 years ago because it redistributes critical food assistance and wealth for the most needy to give billionaires tax cuts, all while ballooning the national debt. That's frankly disgusting in my book, and it's un-American. So I will fight tooth and nail to protect the basic dignity of every person who counts on SNAP to put food on the table, to keep the American dream alive for future generations. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. He yields back. You now recognize the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Mesmer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since 2018, SNAP spending has increased by 73%. Yet as farmers from across America have come to D.C. to warn us of an impending farm crisis, investments in the farm economy have remained stagnant. Meanwhile, input costs have skyrocketed. The bill in front of us today ends the farmers in my district and America their long overdue wait by funding common sense improvements to reference prices and crop insurance while generating savings from the federal balance sheet with common sense reforms to work requirements for able-bodied adults without children and modest cost sharing with states for the administration of the SNAP program. This committee's work delivers incredible wins for the American taxpayer, extends a hand to families that need support, and puts much needed investment into our farm economy so the American farmers can continue to lead the world in agriculture. With that, Mr. Chairman, I lend my full support to this bill and yield back the remainder of my time.
Thank the gentleman. Yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Riley, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I haven't been here for very long, but I have been here long enough to know that this bill is junk. The small family farms that I represent across upstate New York are getting crushed. They're getting crushed. And they deserve a hell of a lot better than what this committee is offering today. A couple months ago, right after I got here, there was an 8th grade class from Ichabod Crane Middle School, and they came here to visit me, and we went out to the House floor. We took a photo on the Capitol. They gave me a Riders hoodie, which I love. And I got to talking with one of the students, and she was telling me that her family has owned a dairy farm in Columbia County for generations. And she was so proud of that. But now she was telling me that at dinner, the family conversations often turn to whether they can keep the farm going. The costs are way too high. Labor is scarce. The markets are unpredictable. So they're talking about literally selling the family farm. And she was telling that to me, and it stuck with me because it reminded me of me and my friends from West Endicott growing up when the factories were closing. Families having that, what are we going to do conversation at the kitchen table. And too many families across upstate New York are having that exact same conversation, and it shouldn't be this way if this place would just do its job. Do your job. But Congress has its priorities so messed up that you managed to somehow come up with a bill that makes things worse. Not better, worse. We should all be working together the way our voters sent us here to do in a bipartisan way on a bipartisan farm bill that serves rural America. And instead, you're so desperate and hell-bent on giving tax cuts to your campaign donors that you're leaving our farmers stranded again without a farm bill. What we ought to be doing around here is breaking up the big ag monopolies so our family farmers can compete on a level playing field, but instead, you're so hell-bent on handing out more tax cuts to mega corporations who don't need it at the expense of folks who do. What we ought to be doing every day is lifting kids out of poverty and giving them a fighting chance. I've got a third of the kids who I represent are on food stamps. And instead of helping them out, you're taking food off their tables and sending them to school hungry. And I know y'all deny it. I've heard it all night. You deny it. We're not cutting foods from kids. The numbers don't lie, folks. It's hundreds of billions of dollars. The numbers don't lie. And we've heard a lot about numbers and statistics here tonight, thrown around a lot of numbers. But you know what's really at stake here? It's the folks back home in upstate New York. There's a single mom in Hurley who wrote to me, and she told me she was able to get her degree and earn a place in the middle class because SNAP kept her family afloat. She doesn't deserve less. I've got small family farmers out in Shenango County and Columbia County. They're feeding their neighbors. They're just trying to survive. They don't deserve less. Got a little kid that I met at the food pantry in Catskill a couple weeks ago. That kid should not be going to school on an empty stomach. He does not deserve less. I don't know a single person in upstate New York who thinks everyday people should get less just so big corporations can have even more. Maybe that makes sense in Washington. I haven't been here very long. Maybe it makes sense here, but it sure as hell doesn't make any sense in upstate New York. If you all want to work across the aisle and do a good farm bill that helps upstate New York and helps those kids, I am here for it. Call me up. We will work together. I will work with anyone who's going to do right by upstate New York. But if you're going to push this bill that hurts us, makes kids hungry, hurts our farmers, leaves our farmers stranded without a farm bill, I'm going to fight it every step of the way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Nunn, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you all for being with us tonight. And I want to thank the chairman specifically for the work they've done and recognizing some of the hard work that many of us around this table have put forward to make sure that this can be successful. I'm encouraged, first and foremost, for our farmers. We're seeing real investments in the farm safety net, and candidly, it's long overdue. Across my district, I represent Iowa. We're the #2 producer of food for this country, right after California, and right next to my friends in the heart of the heartland. We've heard from producers facing really tough choices. Cutting costs, delaying equipment purchases, rethinking what crops they'll actually grow this year and what they can afford due to input costs and the uncertainty that weighs on them. The USDA estimated that our farmers have experienced a 23% drop in net farm income since 2022, the biggest decliner in over a decade. That's not just a number. These are real farmers, like our family's 6th-generation farm that faces this every single planting season. The truth is, our current farm safety net hasn't kept up. It's outdated, and often it doesn't even get triggered when prices drop. We haven't passed a farm bill in 7 years. 7 years our farmers have been waiting for this update. This uncertainty does not come without cost, and it's paid for by our rural farmers. The investments we are considering today will begin to fix this situation, but they're not the final end. So let's talk about the bill's provision. There's a provision that will raise the reference price for all covered commodities, something that farmers in Iowa have been asking for, and I'm proud tonight, Mr. Chairman, that we're going to be able to deliver for them. This is an investment that will provide predictability when prices fall. Another provision keeps our crop insurance programs strong and intact. This program is the single most important risk management tool Iowa producers rely on year after year. And candidly, it's critical for us, not only for those on SNAP, but everybody in the country who wants to be able to eat. This bill expands access and improves coverage for young and beginning farmers who are stepping up to carry America's oldest tradition, farming, forward now and long into the next generation. These improvements couldn't come at a more critical time. The challenges of the Biden administration squeeze margins from all Americans, but particularly farmers. And over the last 4 years, we went from a trade parity to a $50 billion trade deficit in ag. And during that time, not one single new trade deal was proposed or executed. Back in Iowa, the weather's been unpredictable. Markets are still recovering from major global disruptions. And updating the farm safety net isn't just about helping farmers, it's about protecting America's food supply and ultimately America's national security. A strong ag economy quite simply means a stronger America. So tonight, we vote on a bill that helps immediately 87,000 small farmers across Iowa. I'm proud we're investing in the farm safety net in a way that will deliver real results for them, practical relief for our farmers who haven't seen improvement in years. And let me be clear, one-off disaster payments and ad hoc assistance programs are not suitable or reliable for a modern farm safety net. Farmers deserve the stability that they can count on, that they can plant on, and they can harvest on come this fall. This bill lays the groundwork for long-term certainty. The investments we're making here are a direct response to what Iowa farmers told me during my hundreds of Farm Bill listening sessions across our state. Don't wait until it's too late. Food security not only is national security, it's what starts making sure that our producers have the tools they need to weather any storm. These proposals won't address every problem facing rural America, but it shows our farmers what we hear, their concerns, and that we're taking concrete steps forward to address them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. He yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Mannion, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I missed the part leading up to the election where the American voters were asking for cuts to critical programs so that we could increase the national debt and fund tax breaks for billionaires. I represent New York's 22nd Congressional District, which is a true 50-50 district. It's a place where neighbors don't always vote the same way, but they work together, they live together, they solve problems together. That's the spirit that I try to bring to Congress, and it's the reason why I ran for office. It's the reason why my constituents sent me here, was to get things done in a bipartisan way. But unfortunately, this reconciliation bill is not that. Instead, it's coming together instead of coming together to write a bipartisan farm bill that reflects the full diversity of our country's agricultural and nutritional needs, from our dairy producers and apple growers in central New York to families depending on SNAP, we're here marking up a partisan package that has been written behind closed doors. The Farm Bill is supposed to be one of the last true bipartisan traditions in this institution, but by pushing this bill through reconciliation, my colleagues are throwing in the towel on that tradition. I've heard from farmers, food banks, regional markets, school nutrition directors, and working families in my district, and they're not asking for Washington to be more extreme. They're asking for stability, fairness, and solutions that work in the real world. This bill does not meet that test. My father was on public assistance. He benefited from a government food program. His country was there for him when his father passed away after serving in World War I. And just one generation from my father, I sit on this committee, and I'll be damned if I'm going to cut benefits for people who need it to give tax breaks to billionaires. I hope this committee can refocus on delivering a farm bill that doesn't pit the needs of dairy farmers, like my grandfather, against people who need support. The farmers need support. Families who rely on nutrition assistance need support. These priorities are not in conflict with each other. They are both essential, and we should be advancing a farm bill that reflects that. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Harris, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a member of the Agriculture Committee, I am proud of our portion of this big, beautiful bill, which will once again place American farmers first. Whether it's been from disease, natural disasters, bad trade deals, or financial insolvency, our farmers have been under attack, and they're now looking up at us to help them. I'm confident this reconciliation package can do just that. This proposal is long overdue realignment of our food and farming spending, which, like most government spending, has been rife with waste, fraud, and abuse. For example, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, as we've talked about tonight, has grown unchecked year after year, consuming resources meant for our farmers. Today's committee proposal will save the American taxpayer $230 billion and invest some $60 billion in resources for America's farmers. At a time when our national debt is approaching $37 trillion, it is a necessary step to correct our financial course. When programs like SNAP expand, others fall to the wayside. The farm safety net could once be counted upon to support producers through droughts, disease, and economic turmoil. But due to irresponsible spending and backwards priorities, this crucial safeguard has slowly eroded. Our livestock producers have faced an onslaught of threats, whether it's the rise of avian flu or the resurgence of New World screwworm. But today, we can say to our farmers with confidence, help is on the way. This package adequately funds the 3 critical livestock biosecurity programs that help detect, prevent, and fight disease. For the first time in 10 years, we're updating the archaic reference prices used to determine how farmers are compensated when food prices drop by the time the crops are harvested. We're doubling the investment in trade programs that exist to help American farmers build successful partnerships abroad. This fortification will align our spending priorities with the President's effort to shrink the $45.5 billion agriculture trade deficit. And when it comes to SNAP, this bill delivers some common sense reforms that will reduce payment error rates and move us in the right direction to ensure that the program will exist in the future for those who truly need it. It starts with holding states accountable. They need to follow instructions and administer the program responsibly. The latest data shows that my own home state of North Carolina had an unacceptable 8% error rate. That means they gave more taxpayer dollars than was lawful. Now every state will have a financial stake in the disbursement of SNAP benefits for the very first time. They'll be responsible for 5% of the cost, with the federal government paying the other 95%. And this necessary reform is a start, yet we must champion and pursue stronger cost sharing among states and accountability. We're also bringing back the dignity of work to SNAP. We've heard a lot of scripture quoted here tonight, but scripture tells us that by the sweat of our brow we shall eat our food. This is an inextricable connection between working and the ability to eat, and that basic universal principle must be reflected in our laws. Those who are able to work should work. But today, 40% of people who are fully capable of working have been told by their state they don't need to have a job. Well, the days of freeloading off taxpayers is over. Under this bill, we will save $92 billion because states will only have the ability to waive work requirements in targeted areas, not across the entire state like current policy allows. Additionally, we'll move toward work requirements up through age 64 and expect parents with school-aged children to be engaged in the workforce. This is not radical. It is simply responsible. Let me be clear. This proposal protects benefits for the elderly, the disabled, and those who truly cannot provide for themselves. But for those who can, this is a call to action. In America, we believe in lifting people up, not holding them down in dependency. I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and Mr. Chairman, and to the staff of this committee, I thank you for your hard work and your vision in getting us to this point, and with this, I yield back my time.
I appreciate the gentleman yielding back. Before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to give notice. I mean, we're moving through this much quicker than what I expected. And so in terms of making the most of tomorrow, I really have no interest in going past 11 p.m. I don't think we do good work when it gets much later than that. But I think we will have some time for after we exhaust all of us, give everyone that's present a chance to speak, to be able to start on subtitle A of some amendments. So just giving a heads up on that. I'm not going to do a lot of them, but we can get a start. So now recognize gentlelady from Maryland, Mrs. McLean Delaney, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member. Common sense, common ground. Those are the values and the platform I ran on and which I brought to Congress and which I plan to fight for. But I have to say I haven't found a lot of common sense or common ground in this Congress. But I've realized that to have common ground, you have to have shared truths and shared value outputs. And this bill really raises questions about what values are now being honored by my Republican colleagues. Historically, this committee has worked together and advance policy that feeds this country and supports rural America. And for 200 years, this committee has served one of the few places where partisanship took a back seat to practical problem solving, common ground. Today, this legacy is being torn apart, and constituents across all of our districts will pay a price. Let me be clear. Republicans are using budget reconciliation to extend the 2017 Trump tax cuts. And these tax cuts will overwhelmingly benefit our country's wealthiest. And to pay for them, we are today here, slashing more than $300 billion from vital programs that support farmers and help families put food on the table. Sadly, this proposal isn't a surprise. These cuts mirror the priorities of the President's recent budget reconciliation, which guts agricultural research services, wipes out rural development initiatives like broadband expansion, and eliminates Food for Peace, our flagship aid program. And don't think hunger will not only increase with agency freezes, Medicaid cuts, layoffs, and cuts to housing and energy subsidies. A tsunami is coming for rural America. Just tonight, I have to raise up. I kept getting texts because Mountain Maryland is getting flooded through historic rains. Frostburg and Cumberland are hit hard, and there are hundreds of students sheltering in place in their schools. They're worried, and they're saying, please, April, we don't know. Do we need federal funding? Do we need FEMA? But we want to know that the federal government is there for us, and they depend that government will be there when they need us most. You can't keep taking from rural America and expect it to thrive. House Republicans are walking away from this committee's #1 priority, passing a bipartisan farm bill. And within 100 days of this administration, this committee should be focusing on a serious bill that makes real lasting investments. And I say this because I am a farmer's daughter from Idaho. It should be a farm bill that delivers on crop insurance and strengthens the farm safety net. It supports conservation and also agricultural research and smarter and more sustainable solutions to improve crop resilience, reduce waste, and combat natural disasters. Delaying a farm bill, I agree with our colleagues, wastes our time, but we don't want to wasting our time with tax breaks for the wealthy on the backs of the most vulnerable. We are failing to feed the people of our nation. I have visited every corner of my district, and I met with all 5 county farm bureaus as well as the Maryland Farm Bureau. And I constantly hear about the risk cutting both SNAP, because it hurts our farmers and producers. They are leading vendors into SNAP. And by the way, there are many working families who also utilize SNAP. The cuts in this bill will ripple across USDA programs. The hardest hit would be SNAP recipients. SNAP is that lifeline we keep hearing about for 42 million Americans. And I was further shocked to see that the definition of a dependent child has been taken from 18 to 7 years old. IRS regulations, other regulations say dependents are under 18. So I guess we now don't consider children if they are 8 or 10 or 12. In my district, 1 in 9 families rely on SNAP to feed themselves, and half of them are children. No one in this country, as we said, should have to wonder about where their next meal is coming from. And food insecurity is not just about hunger, it's about opportunity. For over 20,000 SNAP retailers, including small stores, specialty shops, and farmer markets, SNAP is an economic driver. It generates $1.50 in economic activity for every dollar in benefits. And let's not pretend that this is about fiscal responsibility. It's about misplaced priorities. So not only does this bill reject bipartisan cooperation, it ignores the people we're elected to serve. I strongly oppose this bill, and I urge my colleagues to push back. We started with a prayer, and I'm going to say what my grandma Rose said. What would Jesus do? I think we all know the answer. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Now recognize the gentleman from South Dakota, Mr. Johnson, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I think we all know that Washington, D.C. is a town with a lot of hyperbole and plenty of political speeches. And I think we've heard more than our fair share of that tonight. And I think when we look at an important piece of policy work like this, I think we want to be sober. I think we want to be detail-focused. I think we want to be data-driven. And so let me just correct for the record some of the things that my colleagues have said. The gentleman from Georgia said that this bill is cruel to seniors. Let me be clear. Seniors are unaffected by this legislation. So for those of you who are 65 years old, 70 years old, 75 years old, who may be scared because some people have chosen to fearmonger, your benefits are not being affected. The gentleman from Massachusetts said that Republicans and Democrats have always agreed that food is a fundamental human right no matter what. Let's be clear, in 1996, and in every single farm bill since then, and in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, Republicans and Democrats came together to say no. In fact, able-bodied people should be subject to work requirements. That is the area of bipartisan agreement that is in the evidentiary record. The gentlewoman from Connecticut said that this bill takes food from our most vulnerable. Let me be clear again, because there has been so much misinformation. If you are a pregnant woman, your benefits are unaffected. If you have young children at home, your benefits are unaffected by this bill. If you are disabled, your benefits are unaffected by this bill. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that we should focus our resources on the neediest Americans, that is what this bill does. The gentlewoman from Ohio had said that this bill is ungodly. Ungodly. Was it ungodly when most of her colleagues on that side of the aisle, in fact, have voted for farm bills that had work requirements for SNAP? Was it ungodly when her colleagues on her side of the dais voted for the Fiscal Responsibility Act that indeed augmented work requirements much in the same way that this bill augments work requirements? Was that ungodly? If it was not ungodly then I think we should not be surprised if some would accuse some of hypocrisy for declaring it ungodly today. The gentleman from Virginia had said that this takes food away from people with disabilities. Again, that is demonstrably and provably false within the four corners of the bill. I know that periodically we all get wound up. We care about these issues. They're important. And because they're important, I think we want to try to speak in ways that illuminates the way forward with truth rather than just with political spin. And I would close, Mr. Chairman, by a quote from a former senator and a former president of the United States who said this: "The culture of welfare must be replaced by the culture of work. The culture of dependence must be replaced by the culture of self-sufficiency and personal responsibility, and the culture of permanence must no longer be a way of life." That was said by Joe Biden. When he declared those words, was he ungodly? Was he cruel? I think not, Mr. Chairman. And with that, I would yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentlelady from Maine, Ms. Pingree, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I am fortunate to have served on this committee for more than a decade. During that time, I've had the opportunity and the great privilege to work on bipartisan farm bills that are designed to strengthen our agricultural sector, to support our farmers, and to help hungry people access food. So I am deeply disappointed that we're sitting here tonight not doing that, but debating a bill that will gut the single largest anti-hunger program in America. Frankly, I can't believe we are trying to shove the Farm Bill into the reconciliation process, stripping this committee of the chance of a truly bipartisan farm bill. And let's not sugarcoat what this bill is. It's a $300 billion assault on struggling families, seniors, children, and veterans, all to fund tax breaks for billionaires and corporations. The average SNAP benefit is $6 a day. $6 a day. That is barely enough to buy a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk. And if this bill passes, some of the most vulnerable people in America will be denied even that. Make no mistake, this will lead to more kids going to bed hungry, more seniors skipping meals to afford their medicine, and more parents forced to sacrifice their own nutrition so their kids can eat. In my state, 175,000 people rely on SNAP to put food on the table, including over 36,000 children and 6,300 veterans. That's tens of thousands of Mainers who stand to lose their benefits under this proposal. 1 in 5 children in Maine struggles with food insecurity. That's 1 in 5. And it's not just individuals who will suffer. The bill threatens the very businesses that keep our rural communities alive. More than 1,500 retailers in Maine, grocery stores, corner markets, and mom-and-pop shops rely on SNAP sales to stay open. When you cut SNAP, you don't just take food off the table, you rip the economic rug out from under those businesses and the communities they support. And then there's the unfunded mandate that this bill dumps on Maine. My Republican colleagues call this cost shifting. But they are forcing states to pay at least 5% and in many cases much more of the cost of supporting SNAP. So let's just call that what it really is. A backdoor way of sending this program into a death spiral, pushing the blame for the inevitable wave of hunger and hardship onto governors and state legislatures. It guts programs like the National Education Obesity and Prevention Grant Program, commonly known as SNAP-Ed. SNAP-Ed helps families make their SNAP dollars stretch further. It teaches people how to make nutritious meals using SNAP funds. In Maine, this program has reached nearly 20,000 people with free classes in cooking, budgeting, and healthy eating. Eliminating these services will leave families with fewer tools to feed their families affordably and healthily, further straining our healthcare system and driving up costs for everyone. Tell me, is this really making America healthy again? This bill is not about reducing waste or fixing fraud or finding heirs. It's all about sacrificing the health and well-being of the most vulnerable amongst us so that billionaires like Elon Musk can get even richer. It's about taking food out of the hands of hungry children, cutting off lifelines to families in need, and shattering the basic safety net that millions of Americans rely on. We should be writing a farm bill that supports our local farmers, strengthens rural economies, and ensures that no one in this country goes hungry. Instead, this proposal sacrifices families and communities for short-term political win. So for me, tonight I'm a no, tomorrow I'm a no, every day from now until whenever my Republican colleagues come to their senses and do what is right for America and for the people who are their constituents, I will stay a no on this bill. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Weed, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Craig. Unfortunately, I am speaking against this partisan bill before us today. I proudly represent the Central Coast of California, where the #1 industry is agriculture, and where thousands of families rely on the food we grow and the nutrition programs this committee has supported in the past. Like so many across the country, families throughout my district have been struggling with the cost of living, high grocery prices, and the ongoing inflation. This administration should be working in a bipartisan way to resolve these issues, but the American people have seen the complete opposite. The cancellation and freezing of federal programs, the firing of thousands of federal workers, and the blanket tariffs placed on many of our global trade partners, imposing even more economic uncertainty on farmers and driving up costs for American consumers. On top of all that, Republicans at the direction of President Trump have decided to cut social programs for the most vulnerable people in this country in order to give billionaires like Elon Musk another tax break. Knowing that American people do not agree with these cuts, my Republican colleagues have used the process of reconciliation to force through this unpopular agenda, an agenda that will hurt children, seniors, veterans, and working parents throughout this country. Despite this, earlier today, the Committee on Energy and Commerce started their process to cut $880 billion in Medicaid for those who need it the most. And tonight, this committee starts its process of cutting over $300 billion from SNAP, leaving hungry families, children, veterans, seniors, and people with disabilities to fend for themselves. In my district alone, 119,000 people rely on SNAP. And instead of protecting and strengthening this program, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are looking at indiscriminate cuts and burdensome requirements to lock people out of this critical safety net, many whom I have heard from. Worse yet, Republicans have also changed the underlying definition of dependent child from 18 years old to 7 years old. This is an outrageous and cruel change that should make every parent angry. If that was not enough, this partisan bill forces states to cover SNAP costs starting at 5% and later increasing based on the state's error rate, knowing that this cost would harm rural counties throughout the country. Not only would cutting SNAP hurt families, states, and farmers, but it would force rural grocery stores to close and take money out of the pockets of our farmers who have been waiting on a long overdue farm bill. If Republicans actually want to help American farmers, they wouldn't be agreeing to cut about $300 billion in this committee's jurisdiction. They would come back to the table and help pass a bipartisan bill, farm bill. So if I haven't made myself clear, I fundamentally oppose this reconciliation bill. I oppose any efforts that takes food away from hungry families Feeding people should not be a political issue, but a human right. As we proceed through this markup, I hope that my colleagues reconsider the harm they are about to inflict on the American people, all for the sake of giving huge tax breaks to the wealthiest Americans and largest corporations. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Bresnahan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Taylor, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank you and your staff for your hard work on this bill and the rest of the committee. It's a very well-reasoned and will be a very effective bill, and I look forward to supporting it in full, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member that has not been recognized wish to be recognized? Hearing no further discussion, we'll move into amendment debate. So with that, does any member have amendments to subtitle A of the committee print?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
Yeah. Members will suspend while the amendment is being distributed. Is there an identifier number on it or anything?
Amendment number 13.
13, Mrs. Hayes. We'll make sure that amendment gets circulated to everyone, and then we'll proceed. believe all members, have all members received a copy of the amendment? Ms. Hayes has offered amendment number 13. The clerk will report the title of the amendment.
Amendment number 13, offered by Mrs. Hayes of Connecticut.
Without objection, amendment will be considered as read. I now recognize the distinguished gentlelady, the sponsor of the amendment, for up to 5 minutes for an explanation of her amendment.
Thank you. We're considering legislation today that would threaten the food security of 16 million children, 8 million seniors, and 4 million people with disabilities. Read the bill. Everyone is affected if states can't meet the cost-sharing requirements. Everyone, including elderly, including children. Maybe pregnant women are protected, but 8-year-olds are not. The cost-sharing provisions in this legislation are going to shift the financial burden to states, forcing states to cut benefits, eligibility, or both to reduce cost. Additionally, this legislation would prevent the Secretary of Agriculture from reevaluating the Thrifty Food Plan, which is used to determine the amount of benefits a SNAP recipient receives. In the 2021 reevaluation, 2 million participants were lifted out of poverty, including more than 1 million children. In the wealthiest country in the world, hunger is a policy choice. We can afford to feed people in this country. SNAP is the most efficient and effective anti-poverty program in our nation. SNAP also helps more than 42 million Americans keep food on the table by providing a modest but meaningful $6 per person per day. I welcome any attempts to make this program even more effective and would join my Republican colleagues in rooting out any type of waste, fraud, or abuse so that we can deliver more benefits to more people. For every $1 spent on SNAP, it generates $1.50 in economic activity. We should be strengthening SNAP, not cutting benefits for the most vulnerable in our society to provide tax breaks for the wealthiest individuals in America. My amendment is simple. It says this legislation can only take effect once the USDA and all state agencies issue reports evaluating and certifying that any changes made to SNAP will not result in a reduction of benefits to eligible individuals or a decrease in participation. This amendment would protect the 390,000 residents in Connecticut and the millions of Americans who use SNAP as a lifeline. Specifically, it would impact my constituents. Luna from Plainville shared her story by saying, and I quote, "My family and I already struggle with bills and making ends meet. The economy is really bad for us middle-class single mothers. Not everyone makes $100,000 a year or went to college to get a degree. I live on half of that and in subsidized housing with 3 children. Removing funds will just increase crime in the community. It's already happening in most cities near me. I don't want to see it getting worse. Our children will suffer and pay the consequences," end quote. During a time where so many American families are already struggling and feeling the pressure of economic uncertainty, we cannot take food away from them. Democrats on this committee want to support farmers. We also want to feed families. This committee has the ability to do both. I urge support of my amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does any other members wish to speak on the on this amendment? Go ahead. Ranking member, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just sitting here and reveling in the fact that my colleagues had so little to say during opening remarks here this evening. I've never seen them quite that silent, just number one. But, you know, I guess it's because they had nothing to say about what's happening here. I don't know. It's just kind of odd. But, you know, at the end of the day, my colleagues have been saying that there will be no cuts to benefits in this bill. That's what many of my colleagues have been saying for weeks and weeks and months. Well, the CBO said today that a minimum of 3 million Americans will be kicked off. That's a hell of a cut to just be kicked off the program. So I'm confused as I sit here today, but let's say we hold our colleagues to their word, and let's get the experts at USDA who both operate and study this program, and the experts in the states who actually administer this program and know their state's budget process best to take a look. Ms. Hayes, I think it's a fantastic idea. And what I also would just make sure everybody here notes that in this text, the state cost shift doesn't actually go into effect until 2028. Huh, that's curious. Wonder what that is. The next election? It's kind of awkward, kind of odd. But look, if we want to certify, let USDA certify that there were no benefit cuts and nobody's going to get kicked off the program, if my colleagues are correct and USDA and each of the states take a look and assure us that there will be no benefit and participation cuts, then this bill can be implemented. But here's the thing, they won't be able to say that. And we all know that sitting here today. And so do my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, by the way. I've still got colleagues on the other side of the aisle who are hoping that the Senate saves them from these cuts of $300 billion. The number was never that big. And let me just say that USDA, that our farm programs are critical and they're important. I am someone who represents a district that is planting right now. I know Title I crop insurance needs improved. I know reference prices need to be plussed up. This is not where we should be doing the Farm Bill. Should not be doing the Farm Bill. So, Madam Ranking Member of the Subcommittee on Nutrition, I want to say that I fully support your amendment here, and I wish we were discussing and debating and negotiating a Farm Bill instead of our colleagues deciding arbitrarily with no discussion among Democrats, no conversation, that this is what they were going to do to one title of the Farm Bill. It's a very dangerous precedent to set, and my colleagues know it. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Lucas, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I always like to observe in these processes that the minority, the political minority, has the right to be heard. And I would expect on many well-intended amendments like this, and a number that will come this evening and perhaps much of tomorrow, my friends will be heard. And that's a right, and that's an important part of the process. But the majority also has a right and a responsibility to govern. The committee's been assigned a task, and we are engaged in that in this process. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, with the greatest of respect, I would encourage my colleagues to listen very thoughtfully to the comments, then reject the amendment, and let's get on with the process and let us do our work. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. McGovern is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And normally I agree with the gentleman from Oklahoma about process, but this process is absurd. I mean, we just received the text of this like yesterday, and there are major policy changes that are contained in this bill. There's a lot of new policy in this bill that in all my years on this committee, I haven't heard come up in any hearing, like requiring a state cost share for SNAP benefits. So I want to make sure that my understanding of this new major policy is correct. So I don't know, Mr. Chairman, whether it's you or somebody here who can answer these questions, but let me use your home state of Pennsylvania for an example. In FY 2023, Pennsylvania had a payment error rate of 16.61%. If the benefit cost shift in your bill were in place this year, Pennsylvania would now be required to pay 25% of the cost of SNAP benefits, which I think is hundreds of millions of dollars. Is that a correct understanding of it?
Will you yield? Are you asking?
If the chair can yield too. I mean, I'm trying to understand. Is that correct? Well, Mr. McGovern, all I can say is I have much more confidence perhaps in my state legislature and governor.
Right.
That they can do a whole lot
well,
better.
but if
and
it
get that
were-
down.
if it
Well,
were-
excuse me, you
yeah,
asked me
yeah.
to respond, and the fact that they'll have a little over 2 years to be able to get to that
Yeah,
point.
well, again, going back to what Mr. Johnson said, thank you, I appreciate it. You know, it's important that we talk about the facts. Again, the process stinks. None of us have been consulted on any of this stuff. There have been no hearings on this thing, for example. You may all be proud of that, but I think it's a lousy way to govern. But if Pennsylvania doesn't come up with the full amount of the required cost share, what happens to SNAP benefits in your state? Is there anything in this bill that says that what states should do if they can't come up with the required cost share?
Well, if you look over the average cost share prior to COVID, when things have really got out of control, they are down in the single digits. Maybe not for every state, but most of the states we are giving states 2 years to adjust their budgets to begin paying for a modest portion of the SNAP benefit.
Yeah.
And all states will pay a minimum 5% share beginning in fiscal year 2028. And as you noted, for those with higher error rates, which, to be clear, are a disservice to all SNAP benefits.
I appreciate it.
Will the
Yeah,
gentleman
these
yield
are
for a
just-
question?
Let me finish my questioning, please. What I'm hearing from states is that they will need to cut benefits or further limit who can access SNAP. And I know you've heard that the same from governors from various states. I know you get the same letter from the governor of North Carolina that all of us did. I guess I'm trying to figure, you know, when you say, you're all trying to say, oh, nothing's going to happen, no benefit's going to be cut, is there anything in this bill that says that states can't cut benefits? I mean, what I'm hearing here is that if states can't come up with the cost share, they're going to have to cut benefits. So when my friends say that no benefits are going to be being cut, that's just false. That's not true. So I'm just trying to, you know, I'm just a little confused here. We got this text literally 24 hours before the start of this markup.
Will the
And
gentleman yield for a
and
question?
I didn't interrupt you, Mr. Johnson, when you went on your tirade, so please respect us. I mean, and you spewed out a whole bunch of falsehoods that, quite frankly, I find offensive, given the seriousness of this topic here. But you did this behind closed doors in some corner of the Trump White House, came up with this plan that would completely upend SNAP. You know, and some of us are trying to get some questions answered because we didn't do a hearing on any of this stuff. So, you know, if states can't pony up the money for their share of the state cost share as mandated by this bill, children, seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities will have their food benefits cut. There is nothing in this bill to prevent that from happening. And I think all this does is maybe give you a talking point when benefits do get cut to say, well, it's not us, it's the states. And I want to remind everybody here, you know, why we're here today, even considering this unconscionable bill in the first place, is because Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress are insisting on giving massive tax cuts to their billionaire buddies and donors. And they've decided to pay for these tax breaks in part by cutting food benefits for children, for people with disabilities, for mothers who have kids now. There'll be a new work requirement that mothers have to go to work if they have kids who are 7, 8, and 9 years old. You know, I think this is a rotten thing to do. The SNAP benefit is about $2 per person per meal. That's it. You can't even buy a cup of coffee in this place for $2, let alone feed a growing child. And so if you want to cut that even, and you want to cut that even further, you know, to pay for tax breaks for the wealthiest and most well-off, I mean, really? You know, one of the things that happened that we learned during COVID is when we actually increased the SNAP benefit a little bit, you know what happened? The food insecurity and hunger rates in this country went down. When those benefits kind of ended, we saw the hunger rates go back up. We have a hunger problem in this country. We have 46 million people who are food insecure. And the answer that you all come up with is to cut benefits even more, and to do it in a way where we don't have an open process, where there's no hearings, where there's no nothing. I mean, come on. This is not the way we should govern. And I get it, you have an artificial deadline that you have to be before the Rules Committee on Monday, but this is absurd.
Is anyone, in the queue, I have Ms. Davis from Kansas, Ms. Budzinski from Illinois. Anyone else seek recognition? Mr. Scott from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to share with my colleagues on the committee the actual language in the amendment where it says, shall only take effect upon the administrator of the Food Nutrition Service, the administrator of the Economic Research Service, and all state agencies issuing reports and certifying that any change to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program in Subtitle A. So basically there can't be any cuts unless every state agency agrees the way the language is drafted. So I'm opposed to the amendment, Mr. Chairman, and I would point out again, virtually every state out there has significant budget surpluses, and it is reasonable to expect them to participate in the administration cost and the cost of this program.
Gentleman yields back. Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to speak in support of this amendment. I continue to be deeply concerned about the efforts by our majority to cut nutrition programs that support the most vulnerable families in our communities, families with children, families that include veterans, and of course our seniors. And this comes at a time when, like I said earlier, Kansans are facing higher prices at the grocery store. From 2020 to 2024, retail food prices rose over 23%. We are talking about $6 a day in support here. These increased prices are squeezing families at the grocery store, and President Trump's reckless approach to these tariffs has threatened to drive up grocery costs even more. For the families struggling to make ends meet, groceries tend to take up an even bigger proportion of their budgets. Cutting nutrition programs at a time when all families are facing higher food costs will have serious consequences. We should be working across the aisle to address the current administration's trade war, combating avian influenza, strengthening our food supply chains, and lowering costs for hardworking families. This bill does not do that, but this amendment might get us a little step closer. I am supporting this amendment, and I would like to yield the remainder of my time to Congresswoman Hayes.
Congresswoman Hayes is recognized.
Thank you, Congresswoman Davids. I hear many of my Republican colleagues saying over and over that the legislation before us does not cut benefits. If that is the case, it should be really easy to support this amendment, which says the legislation cannot cut benefits. It's quite simple. It's very easy. And then we can put this to bed and get back to debating other issues. If you say it does not cut benefits, then support the amendment that says it can't cut benefits. Last week, the president said that he would not, there was talk that he would not support adding additional burdens to the state. I'm not sure what happened in the back room where everyone came out, and the decision has been made to increase the state's portion, and which in turn will cut benefits to participants. There's no way to get to this number. It started out with $230 billion in cuts, and you guys have taken it up to $313 billion in cuts. And while you call it savings, people will not eat. Making the choice to not spend the money means you are also making the choice to not feed people. And it is not lost on me that the question still has not been answered. What happens if the states can't come up with their cost-sharing portion? This idea that well-run states will take care of it and legislatures will figure it out, again, as someone from a donor state that gives more to the federal government than we get back, I know that there are many red states that already receive more from the federal government. So what happens if a state can't come up with their portion? It means that people in your respective states will lose benefits. There is no way around it. I would have a lot more respect if you guys would come to the table and just say, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. We think it is best to cut these programs. We think it is best to take benefits away. We've made that decision, and this is what we're doing. But these cowardly approaches to legislation, like it's a bait and switch. You're cutting benefits. There's no other way around it. You're cutting benefits and taking $60 billion and reinvesting it into other farm programs, which we have long called for supporting other farm programs, and taking the other $230 billion and shifting it to tax cuts for the wealthiest individuals. Just say it. Say it with your chest. This is what you're doing. You're taking food away from children. Maybe not 8-month-old children, but 8-year-old children. I encourage my colleagues to support this amendment, because if you're not cutting benefits, let's just put it up for a vote and say that you're not cutting benefits. I yield back.
Yield back to Ms. Davids. Any?
To Ms. Davids.
Yes.
Do you-
Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Yield back, thank you. I have Mrs. Bazinski in the queue. Any others seek recognition? Ms. Bazinski, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to voice my support for my colleague's amendment. This should really be a relatively simple one for all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, as has been stated, to support this amendment. I have heard extensively from my Republican friends that this package does not represent any kind of cut, that folks will not be negatively impacted. So all I'm suggesting is, let's prove it. All this amendment asks is that we conduct a study to verify these changes will not reduce benefits or decrease participation. If the study does in fact say that these cuts will not reduce benefits or decrease participation, then that's great. But I seriously, seriously doubt that that is in fact the case. In fact, we know there is no universe in which these cuts don't have that effect. $300 billion, that is not a small number. Let's say we order the states to pay more. States are not in a financial position to absorb significant increases in costs. In fiscal year 2024, tax revenue fell in 40 states, and many are already projecting budget shortfalls. And now we expect them to successfully take on millions more in spending. That math just simply does not add up. But if my friends across the aisle are so confident, and I say to my good friend Mr. Johnson, if you're so confident these are not going to impact and make any cuts, they should support an effort to prove exactly what they are claiming. They should have no problem co-signing their name on this amendment, especially my colleagues who have been so outspoken against this massive cut. I do believe they want what's best for their communities. They don't want to see families go hungry, and neither do I. That's why I support this amendment. The American people want transparency and accountability. It's about ensuring that we are not making decisions that could potentially harm the very people we are here to represent. It's about being honest. So let's put these claims up to the test. Let's do what is right for the American people. Thank you, and I want to yield my remainder of my time back to Ms. Hayes.
Ms. Hayes is recognized.
I encourage support on this amendment because, once again, if we're truly not cutting it, prove it. This is a very easy way for everybody on this committee to agree on the simple fact that we are not here to cut benefits from our most vulnerable individuals, and that this legislation does not do that. It's very easy. It's very easy for us to come to we're here in the committee room, who was left on the other side. We didn't have the opportunity to have debate and hearings and go back and forth and really come to an agreement because we were locked out of the process. So here, before we have a final vote, I encourage my colleagues to support this amendment that says that this proposed legislation will not cut benefits or decrease participation for any eligible SNAP participants. It's very simple. Let's prove it. I yield back to Ms. Budzinski.
Yeah, I'd like to yield my time to Mr. McGovern.
Yeah, thank you. Again,
Mr. McGovern is recognized.
this whole state cost share policy shift is something new. And wouldn't you think you'd do a hearing on it? And wouldn't you think you'd have witnesses so that we didn't have to trust, you know, your word that nothing's going to change, that we could actually listen to people in the states to see whether, like, for example, in Pennsylvania, they could come up with $1 billion, because that's what it is if it went into place right now. And states don't have the ability to do that. And so if they can't come up with the cost share, what ends up happening is they have to cut benefits. They have to cut benefits. And as we said over and over and over again, the benefit right now is about $2 per person per meal. That is what you are cutting in order to give tax breaks to billionaires. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back to Ms. Wenzinski.
I'd like to yield to Ranking Member Craig.
Ranking member is recognized.
Thank you. I just want to agree with my colleagues here. Yesterday, 23 governors released a statement. It said the notion that states will respond to these massive cuts by backfilling with state resources is simply inaccurate and impossible. It's not just a cost shift to the states, it's cuts to Medicaid, SNAP, and the social safety net that supports millions of Americans. To my colleagues' points, we need those 23 Republicans to come tell us, those 23 governors to come tell us what is the impact on states. And 10 of my Republican colleagues sitting here today come from states whose governors signed this statement, including governors from Kansas, Wisconsin, Washington, Arkansas, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. I have colleagues in this room here tonight whose governors are begging you to look at what you're asking them to do. I yield back to my colleague.
And the gentleman's lady's time has expired.
Thank you.
Even though the clock stopped at 2, so. Now I recognize the gentleman from South Dakota, Mr. Johnson, for 5 minutes.
So I just want to provide a little context because I know that the state cost share can seem daunting. Some have called it draconian. And just as a guy who's helped to put together a state budget, I know a number of you have done the same thing. I just want to tell you how we actually construct this. South Dakota's economy, back when I was chief of staff, was growing faster than the national average. That meant that our FMAP on the traditional Medicaid population was adjusting. We had to pay more every year. And we just built that into the budget. So I'm going to give you real numbers from South Dakota. The numbers from your state will be bigger because we're a pretty small state, but they're going to be about the same. Okay? So in South Dakota, the SNAP benefit is $180 million a year. So in 2028, South Dakota's got to come up with 2.5% of that. Okay? Then in 2029, we got to do the same. So that's $4.5 million. Now, remember, we've got years to build this in. We got 4 years before this thing's completely built in. So South Dakota, our general fund revenue is about $2.2 billion a year. If that grows on average 2% a year at any point over the course of the next 4 years, we're getting $44 or $45 million of new revenue a year. So $45 million new comes in, and you just start by taking $2.5 million out of the 45. That doesn't require any cuts. That just requires that of the $45 million of new money that the state gets, $2.5 million goes toward this additional cost share. A cost share that is not unusual because we see it in TANF, and we see it in Medicaid, and we see it in most every other public assistance program that's out there. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield by saying this. Not only is it not draconian, it's the kind of thing that almost every one of our states have dealt with in the last 20 years.
And the gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Figures, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, hunger doesn't discriminate. It doesn't ask which side of the aisle you're on. It doesn't ask who you voted for president. It's a harsh reality, which, you know, maybe it's a little bit more personal to my district, given the poverty rates that we have, given the low median income that we have in my district, given the fact that I'm part of this 1 in 4 club of households in my district that are on SNAP benefits. But it's a harsh reality for over 330,000 children in the state of Alabama, many of which live in my district. And it's an even more devastating blow in the current economic realities of where we are. In my home county of Mobile County, the average SNAP benefit is already 22% lower than the average cost of a meal. And so we, in this committee today, we have an opportunity to stand for the most vulnerable among us. And this amendment offered by Mrs. Hayes, the teacher, the former National Teacher of the Year, and I appreciate the teaching you are doing here today. This amendment is crucial because it ensures that any changes to SNAP cannot take effect unless you know, the plan works out as we're being told it would, that there won't be any cuts to benefits or any reductions in participation. And I understand the verbiage that's being used to say that, oh, states can do this, states can take this money, and, you know, we can rob Peter to pay Paul, and all of these things. But the fact of the matter remains, we can't guarantee that. We can't promise that. And if states don't do that, then we're going to be left in a position where people are going to have benefits reduced or eliminated. And look, no one chooses to live below the poverty line. People don't like being poor. Like, the whole goal of poor people, if you actually know poor people, is to get out of being poor, is to get out of poverty. People work hard to try to pull themselves up. This is not a place where people like to be. No one wants to strive to struggle to feed their family. Nobody wants to do that. So when hard times hit in this country, the most affluent country that the world has ever known, we must ensure that safety nets are there, strong enough to catch those. And this amendment is a commitment to protect the dignity and well-being of our neighbors and our loved ones and the people that really matter, the American people. And so by supporting this measure, we reaffirm our fight for the working poor, the elderly, the vulnerable families of District 2 in Alabama, and everyone's district represented in this Congress. And so this is the right thing to do. It's the right path to go, one that builds a stronger, more resilient community for us all. And with that, I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield the balance of my time to Congresswoman Hayes.
Congresswoman Hayes is recognized.
Thank you. I just want to add that it's important for everyone to understand that we are not considering this legislation in a vacuum. At the same time that we are in this committee, Energy and Commerce is in a committee talking about cuts to Medicaid. So those 23 governors are concerned not only about covering these cost-sharing added fees, but also keeping health care for the people in their states. So it's not just one thing. And these cost-sharing numbers will constantly change because this legislation also changes the tolerance threshold from $56 to zero. So their error rates in every state are going to go up to account for $0 to $55. So this is going to continue to change. That's not what my Republican colleagues are considering here. If it were one piece of legislation and we were only talking about addressing cuts to food security and food and nutrition programs that governors had to worry about, that would be one thing. But governors have to worry about making up the difference for the $880 billion that they're cutting in the other building as we speak. So governors have to worry about food programs, they have to worry about health care, they have to worry about Head Start programs being cut. So it's not just one program. It's not just what we're considering on this committee. People in these states will suffer. This bill is so inherently wrong. This big, beautiful bill does nothing for the little guy. It continues to cut food, health care, education, housing, libraries, for crying out loud, to give tax breaks to the wealthiest individuals in this country. If waste, fraud, and abuse was so rampant, why would they put off these changes until 2028? Because that's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about taking $300 billion from the most vulnerable individuals to give to able-bodied billionaires. I yield back.
The time has expired right on time. Recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Jackson, for 5 minutes.
Chairman Thompson, I thank you so much, and thank members of the committee. I have an amendment at the desk, amendment number 16.
Well, we're still on amendment 13, Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, come on, man.
Sorry about that. I think Mrs. Takuda from Hawaii has a comment.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just actually want to follow up on the comments from Ranking Member Hayes. You know, I ran the Ways and Means Committee in Hawaii for a number of years. That's in charge of everything from taxation to appropriations. And I can assure you that even in our best years, there was never surpluses that had so much money that we would be able to take on hundreds of millions to billions of dollars of costs because the federal government abdicated their responsibilities. As Ranking Member Hayes mentioned, we are talking about, for my little state, upwards of $350 million in potential cost shares for SNAP, let alone what would be similar towards the billions of dollars if they actually employ some of the Medicaid tactics that they are looking at right now in a building next door. When you look at Head Start elimination, when you look at Department of Education cuts, all of these things will fall on the shoulders of our state legislatures and our governors. I would suggest that you go home this weekend and you ask them how much pain and suffering can you hold, because I will tell you this, having run the money committees, all it takes is a fire, it takes a hurricane, it takes a flood, it takes an unnecessary trade war to piss off our allies and our adversaries, to drive up prices on everyday goods for Americans. That's all it takes to be the tipping point, to make it absolutely unacceptable, impossible for state governments to absorb any of these costs. And I will tell you, you can go ahead and ask your constituents. They don't care what color of money it is that provides them with the support they need to feed their families. Don't think somehow by passing the buck on to states to make these impossible decisions and to be the one that cuts the benefits, that you will be somehow less culpable, that somehow the blood will not be on your hands, that you are taking away benefits from everyday Americans. You will, in fact, we all will, if we pass these kinds of egregious, harmful, inhumane pieces of legislation, we'll be guilty of taking away food benefits from senior citizens, from children, from working families, from our veterans, from disabled Americans. And I would comment that clearly we seem to have a misdirect in terms of our majority leadership. Now, I know, Mr. Chair, you have said that there will be no SNAP cuts, and yet if you listen to what the gentleman from Georgia commented, he seems to be at odds with you, because Mr. Scott read the text of the amendment that we are debating here, saying that there cannot be cuts, therefore he opposes the amendments. He clearly wants to have cuts to SNAP, just by fact of opposing this very amendment that would first and foremost make sure there are no cuts as a result of the legislation before us. And in the remaining time, I just want to read you two stories that have been sent to me in recent days about real people who will be hurt from these cuts. Mary from Hilo writes, "We are a family of 6, all covered under MedQuest, which potentially could get cut. My husband and I are not lazy. We aren't working the system. We are struggling financially after my husband lost his family plan health insurance due to my neck injury that requires a single level fusion, and he needed to care for me. I am thankful for that MedQuest. My husband is the sole provider for us financially. When he needed to stop working to take care of me, there were a few months of hardship before we qualified for SNAP benefits. We sold what we could, including our wedding bands, in order to buy food and to buy gas. When we received our SNAP benefits, I cried. To be able to buy food for our family was a blessing. It's terrifying as a parent when your babies ask you, are we going to starve?" Noelani from Kihei, "I'm a single mom, born and raised on Maui. I work full-time." She's a worker now. "I work full-time, and that's still not enough to survive here. Having the state help with medical coverage helps to make sure my children are healthy and immunizations are up to date. My job doesn't offer family medical, so that makes it harder for people like me. SNAP is already income outdated, that the guidelines and limits are unbelievably difficult, but I'm grateful for even one night help with food for dinner. It makes me rest a little easier knowing my kids aren't going to be hungry. Don't take SNAP away, because food in Hawaii is truly expensive. Go home, my friends, go home and talk to your state legislatures who will be carrying the undue burden of taking on the cost of SNAP, taking on the cost of Medicaid. Talk to your constituents who don't care who pays the bill, but they do care when their children cry because they're hungry. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does anyone else speak on the amendment? Dr. Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I've been listening, and I guess I say we can just put your money where your mouth is. And I just believe that this amendment is really about accountability. If we truly mean what we say, and I see the gentleman is not in here, but many of you have said that there are not going to be any cuts. But I think about what my colleague from Connecticut has said, it's not just this one piece of the bill. Education is going to be hit, and I can tell you, having served in the North Carolina legislature for 20 years, we're not going to have it there. They're not going to do it. I know that group. They're not going to do it, and I don't believe the state's going to have the money to do it. And so I think we have to think about that and about being accountable. And again, if what you say you really believe, there's no reason for you not to support this amendment. I mean, it's simple. If you say, and you say it and you believe it, that no one is going to be hurt, nothing's going to be cut, then vote for this amendment. It's pretty simple. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield my time to Mr. McGovern.
No,
Mr. McGovern is recognized.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding, and I'm sorry Mr. Johnson left the room, but if you listen to him, you would think that the states have no skin in the game when it comes to SNAP. That's just not true. They're responsible for 50% of the cost of SNAP administration, but they're also responsible for cost shares and a whole bunch of other federal programs. And going back to what Ms. Hayes said, you know, we're gathering here at a time when, you know, Elon Musk and Doge and the administration are unilaterally making widespread cuts in every budget you can imagine. This is Police Week, and they're cutting cops grants that are going back to our districts. And so states have to decide whether or not to try to make up that difference or whether or not they just do not fund those programs. Transportation costs, you name it, environmental cleanup, housing, all these things are being cut. So the idea that somehow, oh, the states just need to better manage their budgets and everything will be fine is ludicrous. Doesn't make any sense. It's ignoring the current reality that we're in right now. Look, the bottom line is this. You know, we feel so passionately about this because, you know, if you've ever met a hungry child in this country, it's heartbreaking. And there are 46 million food insecure, hungry individuals in this country. Many of them are children. And that will get worse. You know what? I didn't come here to oversee an increase in hunger. I came here to try to end hunger once and for all. I think we all have a moral obligation. And when the gentleman from South Dakota says, oh, Democrats and Republicans never agreed on this, well, there was a senator from his state, George McGovern, and a senator from Kansas, Bob Dole, who did agree and came together, and they did a lot of good stuff to strengthen the food safety net in this country and move toward ending hunger. And then that all got undone. We need to get back on that track, and I thank the gentlelady. I yield back to her.
Thank you for yielding back. I just want to say, listen, if we know, again, if we believe it's true, then we should support this amendment. I can't imagine that my Republican colleagues don't have poor folks in your district who are hungry. I'm going to yield to Ms. Hayes.
I'll take it. I encourage my colleagues once again to support this legislation. As we've heard over and over, the strategy right now coming out of Republican side is to flood the zone, to create so much chaos and confusion that people really can't even pay attention to what is happening. Again, it is not only about what is happening on this committee. Look across all the jurisdiction of all the committees and look at all of the programs that are being cut. As my colleague from Hawaii said, no state has that amount of a budget surplus to backfill all of these programs that are being cut. The thing that we should be able to agree upon is feeding people. Hunger is a policy choice once again. We don't have hungry people in this country because of war, because of drought. We have hungry people because of legislative decisions that are being made. I haven't heard anything about how we can address waste, fraud, and abuse, how we can modernize the program, how we can chip enable EBT cards, how we can make sure that we streamline the process for recertification. Nothing to address the fundamental issue that everyone on the other side is complaining about, and that is waste. Let's get back to the table and work on that, but not at the expense of taking food out of the mouths of children. I yield back to Ms. Adams.
Yields back. Does it? Any other? Mr. Salinas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to remind folks, in my opening remarks, I made the statement that Oregon would see the the need to backfill essentially $400 million in SNAP benefits if we did not want the 800,000 people in my state to go hungry. And I just want to read you a list of folks. And I mean, we're talking about folks like Linda from Dallas, Oregon, who basically says that across our nation, 40 million people, including 1 in 5 children here in Oregon, participate in SNAP. We're talking about folks like Jeffrey from Salem, Oregon. I do not use, nor have I ever needed to use, programs like SNAP, but I strongly believe that such programs are beneficial to those that need them. Jody from Monmouth. She's so concerned about food banks being nearly empty. She's concerned that there's talk about cutting food stamps and concerned that free school lunch and breakfast might be on the chopping block soon too. And let's just look at what these benefits are going to, these big cuts. So we've been talking about almost $300 billion in cuts to this program to go to people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Ellison, Warren Buffett, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, Steve Ballmer, Bill Gates, Michael Bloomberg. Those are the top 10 wealthiest people in the United States. I don't think they or their families ever go hungry. I don't think anyone in their orbit ever knows a meal that is not placed on their table. This is what we are talking about. We are talking about $6 a day. And all this amendment is asking for is a little sunlight, the transparency of the transaction that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are saying there won't be cuts in benefits. The states won't have to pick this up. Everything will be fine. Everything will not be fine. People going hungry in this country is a policy choice. And this is what we're being asked to do today. So if we want to be honest and give this committee the intellectual integrity that it deserves, let's pass this amendment. I yield the balance of my time to Ms. Hayes.
Ms. Hayes is recognized for the balance of the time.
Well, I think you know what I'm going to say. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment for all of the reasons that we have heard. It is very simple. The amendment says that there can be no cuts to benefits. If my Republican colleagues are dead set on the fact that this bill, this legislation, does not cut benefits to the people, not only in my district, it's incredible how the GOP is literally tweeting at me statistics from my district. I want you all to know that I don't only care about people in Connecticut eating, I care about people in Pennsylvania eating, and in Mississippi eating, and in Louisiana, and in Arkansas, and in North Dakota, and in South Dakota, and everywhere in every district. The idea that we only care about things that benefit us, that is not how I operate. That is not how we operate. We understand that every district, as Ms. Adams says, has poor people, has people who are struggling to get by, has working parents, who have people who are already meeting the work requirements that are set forth by this program and still can't make it. Still need supplemental assistance to help them put food on the table. So I would encourage everybody on this committee to look at the statistics. Look at the people in your district who were being harmed by this legislation. I can tell you, how much time I got?
A minute.
Okay, take your time. In the chairman's district, 14,741 households, or 39%, include children. In Mr. Johnson's district, 90 households, or 50%, include children. In Mr. Bresnahan's district, 23,304 households, or 43%, include children. Children will be harmed by this. An 8-year-old cannot go to work. I don't understand the logic behind changing the age of a minor child to cut off after 7 years. And we didn't have a hearing to even discuss it. So I urge my colleagues not to support this legislation. People will be harmed. Families will go hungry. And if you're saying this bill doesn't do that, then support the amendment that says that it cannot. And with that, I don't even remember who gave me this time. I yield back to.
I yield back.
That time has expired. Any other members seek recognition to speak on the amendment? If not, I'm going to take the liberty of speaking on the amendment. The reforms in the committee mark ensure that SNAP works the way Congress intended it to. And by reinforcing work and instituting long overdue accountability incentives to control costs and end executive and state overreach. This will preserve the integrity and fiscal sustainability of the program moving forward so it can continue to serve the most vulnerable among us. This amendment would unnecessarily delay the implementation of these vital reforms and could risk the committee failing to meet its reconciliation instructions, risking a tax hike for all Americans next year, and preventing the implementation of long overdue program integrity improvements which serve the most vulnerable. And I urge a no vote on the amendment. So the question, hearing no further conversation, the question is on the amendment offered by Ms. Hayes, amendment number 13. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed by saying no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the nays have it, and the amendment is not agreed upon.
We get a recorded vote.
I asked for a recorded vote.
A recorded vote has been requested pursuant to Committee Rule 3I2. Further proceedings on the amendment shall be postponed. And with that,
I think the chairman needs a hearing aid. There are no Republicans here. We won that vote.
I think the gentleman needs to not be quite so rude. So with that, and I may benefit from a hearing aid, actually. Hearing no further discussion, the committee will stand in recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, May 14th, at which point we will continue to consider amendments to the committee print.